Security services at the Old Central Library are also proposed to be eliminated in this option. And lastly, option C proposes a partial reduction of the eviction prevention program by 2.1 million, which would result in significant operational impacts. As previously mentioned, the city funds a variety of homelessness services. We currently have a total of 1,478 emergency shelter beds for a variety of populations, including single adults, seniors, families with children, and survivors of domestic violence. From July 2025 through March of 2026, we have served over 2,900 individuals with 497 exits to housing. Another sheltering option we fund are our safe sleeping sites. Across the two locations, we have a total of 767 spaces available, with each tent space having capacity for up to 2 individuals. So far this fiscal year, we have served nearly 1,600 people, and 142 people have exited to permanent or long-term housing. Our safe parking program provides another type of shelter option for individuals and families experiencing homelessness who reside in their vehicles. The program has a total capacity of 455 spaces. As of March, the program has served 1,056 individuals, including 216 children, and almost 200 individuals have exited to housing. Outreach is a critical component of our emergency response system. Outreach workers provide basic needs assistance, street-based case management services, and connections to critical resources. The city currently funds 41 outreach workers who have served almost 5,000 people and connected over 530 people to housing this fiscal year alone. The Family Reunification Program is a hybrid outreach and rehousing program. The program connects individuals experiencing homelessness with their families or loved ones who are able to provide a stable living environment, build support systems, and help establish long-term housing. The program has reconnected 210 individuals to housing this fiscal year. Lastly, the city offers storage space for individuals experiencing homelessness so they can keep their belongings in a safe and secure area while they attend appointments, go to work or school, or work with housing navigators to seek housing opportunities. The city funds 2 storage facilities that have a total of 900 bins. This fiscal year, the average utilization rate across both sites is approximately 97%. The department reviewed external contracts and services. There were no suggested reductions for FY27 that weren't already reduced. The department regularly reviews contractual budget needs, which includes zero-based budgeting reviews during the budget development process. This concludes our presentation. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll turn it over to the Office of the IBA for their comments.
Thank you, Council President Amy Lee with IBA's office, and thank you to the department for their presentation and for coordinating closely with our office during our budget review. Our review of the HSSD budget starts on page 195 of our report. As with prior years, the Council is only being asked to approve the general fund and TOT fund allocations in the HSSD budget. Other funding sources, primarily state HAP funds, will come before the Council separately. The department's presentation reviewed the significant proposed adjustments, including the 3 options prepared by HSSD to meet a $3.8 million reduction target assumed in the proposed budget. Before turning to those reduction options, I just want to note a few items. First, it was recently brought to our attention that the $2.4 million proposed expansion of opioid treatment beds to be funded by the Opioid Settlement Fund are no longer being contemplated at the Veterans Village of San Diego campus, but rather other site options are being explored. Second, the proposed budget includes $5.7 million in additional revenues beyond proposed expenditures. This is because baseline expenditures are not fully reflected in the proposed budget. Specifically, $4.9 million in expenditures for existing programs was not included due to a last-minute change in funding sources. HSSD requested these expenditures to be added back in during the May revision, subject to review and approval. The table of program-level expenditures on page 210 of our report indicates that HSSD fiscal year 2027 expenditures would be closer to $62.1 million between the proposed budget and the May revision if approved. Third, beyond the options for the $3.8 million reduction target, there are proposed program reductions included in the proposed budget, including the closure of the Neil Good Day Center and the elimination of downtown public restrooms operated by the department. I'll focus the remainder of my comments on the reduction options prepared by the department, but I am available for any questions the committee may have on the department's individual budget adjustments. As you heard from staff, the proposed budget assumes a $3.8 million reduction target of general homelessness services, but defers the program's specific reductions to council discussion today and through the rest of the budget approval process. The 3 options are summarized in a table on page 200 of our report. As the department already summarized these 3 options, I will just note a few items for consideration. All three options share three proposals: the elimination of central elementary safe parking due to low utilization, the removal of security services to physically secure the old central library facility, and various reductions to the eviction prevention program, or EPP. EPP provides both direct legal services to assist low-income tenants facing eviction and additional services such as flexible one-time funding, which may include paying for groceries, hotel vouchers, transportation, and rent-related expenses. Under option A, the reduction of 200 to 250 shelter beds at 16th and Newton, this would result in an estimated loss of 9 to 11% of citywide shelter capacity, or 19 to 24% of single adult beds. Without replacement beds, this reduction in isolation would likely increase unsheltered homelessness. According to the Housing Commission, this option should be considered in conjunction with the proposed closure of the day center nearby, as cutting both would significantly reduce supportive services for individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness. This option would also reduce EPP by $200,000, resulting in reducing flexible funding by half, but rent-related expenses would still be prioritized and direct legal assistance would still be maintained. Under option B, the closure of 20th and B safe sleeping would reduce safe sleeping capacity by 24%. Although safe sleeping connects unsheltered individuals with case management and key basic services, under federal definition, participants are still considered unsheltered as safe sleeping is not recognized as shelter. As a result, the closure of 20th and B would increase street homelessness, but would not impact unsheltered homelessness. This option would also reduce EPP by $49,000, resulting in flexible funding for hotel vouchers and grocery cards being reduced or eliminated. Direct legal assistance would still be maintained. Under option C, EPP would be reduced by $2.1 million, a 71% funding reduction, which would reduce direct legal services by 71% and eliminate all other EPP services. For reference, in fiscal year 2025, 234 tenants received full legal service assistance, and more than 2,000 tenants received limited legal assistance through EPP. This option also eliminates safe parking at Arrow Drive. We note on Arrow Drive, because this is a temporary closure in effect in the current fiscal year with no significant service level impacts, council may wish to consider this reduction. While three options are in front of you today, we want to emphasize that council is not limited to these options. Modifications or an altogether different package can be developed as long as the general fund budget is ultimately balanced with other reductions in the HSSD budget or elsewhere in the general fund. Our review provides a framework on page 204 of our report for council to consider to guide discussion by specifically focus on how to prioritize services and populations served across the three major program reductions. So to the extent that council has two shared top priorities among maintaining capacity for emergency shelter, safe sleeping, and eviction prevention, the remaining third option may be worth considering for reduction. If council members support or oppose any one of these specific three options that was presented by staff, you should communicate that today so it may be considered during the May revision. Regardless of the discussion today, if there are options that have been presented or otherwise modifications or alternative reductions you would like to see, we encourage each council member to be as specific as possible in your final budget modification memoranda due to our office on May 20th. Our office will then use that information to formulate final budget modification recommendations. Our report this year also includes additional context on 4 of the city's main homelessness interventions. Each of the city's homelessness interventions serves populations with different needs, resources, and housing barriers. As funding decisions should consider program outcomes to a reasonable extent, council may wish to request additional program outcomes and details to inform funding decisions. Our office will be available to support council members as you evaluate these or any other alternatives you may wish to explore. Next, I will turn it over to Selena.
Thank you, Amy. And good morning, Council President LaCava and members of the Budget Review Committee. My name is Selena Villegas, and I'm here to summarize the Division of Race and Equity's review of the Homelessness Strategies and Solution Department's FY27 proposed budget found on page 204 of the IBA report. While our full analysis identified 8 equity implications, my comments today will highlight 3 equity implications. Among these is the $3.8 million set of homelessness services reduction options presented in the issues for council consideration. These reductions pose the most significant equity concerns, particularly for communities already facing limited access to transportation, supportive resources, and economic stability. When critical services are reduced, the impacts are not isolated. Burdens shift to other systems, including emergency response, Clean SD, and the public realm. Unhoused residents remain members of our community, and disruptions in one part of the system ripple across others. To reach the 3.8 million reduction target, each option combines a major service reduction with smaller shared reductions, such as cuts to safety services and safe parking supports, along with reductions to the eviction prevention program. These packages differ in their primary impact area, but all carry disproportionate consequences for people with the fewest alternatives. Option A, the reduction at the 16th and Newton shelter. This currently serves 320 individuals, many with complex behavioral health needs, chronic medical conditions, and limited mobility. The proposed reduction lowers capacity to 200 to 250 beds, which would disproportionately affect individuals with the greatest need with the fewest available alternatives, creating additional barriers for those who already are least able to access traditional shelter models. For option B, the closure of the 20th and B safe sleeping site. This safe sleeping site supports approximately 180 tents, offers double occupancy when needed, and includes ADA accessible accommodations. Residents who rely on this site often cannot safely access congregate shelter due to trauma histories, disability, behavioral health needs, or the need to stay with partners, pets, or belongings. Closing this location is likely to increase unsheltered homelessness in East Village, an area already experiencing high concentrations of people living outdoors, while reducing access to safe, stable alternatives. Option C, the reductions to the eviction prevention program. This carries a $3 million total budget and has served over 2,000 residents through March 2026. The proposed reductions include for option A, $200,000, option B, $4,800,000, and then option C, $2 million. Prevention is one of the most cost-effective and equitable interventions in the homelessness response system. Reducing this program increases the risk of families, seniors, and low-income renters falling into homelessness, especially in communities already experiencing housing instability. Council may wish to consider the outcomes achieved by the eviction prevention program as part of evaluating these reductions. Beyond these three options, additional proposed cuts, such as closing the Neil Good Day Center and eliminating downtown public restrooms, would remove essential daily needs services, including restrooms, showers, mail access, and a safe space during the day. Losing these supports reduces the stability for unsheltered residents and may heighten public health risk. Further reductions to shelter capacity, safe sleeping operations, and specialized programs for youth, families, and residents with substance use disorders could widen existing gaps for people with disabilities or chronic health conditions. Taken together, these reductions across shelter, prevention, outreach, and basic needs services have the potential to significantly affect the city's ability to provide equitable access to housing and crisis response. Thank you. This concludes my comments. I welcome any questions.
All right, thank you both. We appreciate the input of the IBA and give us additional perspective. So I'll turn it over to my council colleagues for questions on this department. We'll start with Council Member Whitburn.
Thank you very much, Council President, and thank you to HSSD, the IBA, the Division of Race and Equity. And I really want to appreciate and highlight what we just heard from the Division of Race and Equity, which is that when you reduce services to people experiencing homelessness, you are really just shifting costs to other parts of the system. When I think about my vision for this city, I want a city where every resident takes pride in San Diego, where every resident feels that this city makes their life better, and where every resident believes that this city gives them an equal opportunity to achieve their goals. But my vision actually starts with something much more fundamental. I want a city where every resident has the right to survive. When you leave this city hall after 8 o'clock at night, you have to zigzag through people sleeping in the breezeway, or at least trying to sleep. Some of them are just lying on the bare cement, shivering in the cold. We should look at and remember their faces, because many of them are asking us for help. Many of them have asked us for a shelter bed, and we have told them no. We have told them we don't have a shelter bed for them. So they shiver in the cold on the bare cement outside City Hall. And some of them may not survive. Amid that reality, it is incredible that we are sitting here talking about reductions to homelessness programs. These are life-saving programs, very literally. It feels uncomfortable to talk about progress when people are still dying on the streets. But because of our programs, the number of homeless people dying on our streets has at least gone down. In 2023, 624 people who are homeless died on our streets. 624 people died on our streets. In 2024, that number at least dropped from 624 to 488. I'm either eager to see a further reduction when the numbers come out for 2025. There's been a lot of discussion about the most effective way to address homelessness, especially on a limited budget. There are certainly tough choices to make. My priority is to first end street homelessness. When we do that, we help people who live in the most inhumane and life-threatening conditions. And we're making progress. The Regional Task Force on Homelessness's latest point-in-time count that was just released shows a decrease in unsheltered homelessness of 6.6%. That decrease for the second consecutive year. That number does not take into consideration the over 500 people now off the streets and staying in safe sleeping. Under federal rules, people in safe sleeping are counted as unsheltered, even though they have security and bathrooms and showers and meals and connections to housing and other services. According to Homeless Strategies and Solutions, 80% of the people who are staying in safe sleeping have said no to every other type of shelter. Safe sleeping is critical to reducing chronic homelessness, and we can't afford to cut that lifeline. When we add shelter, we improve and very literally save lives. We also improve neighborhoods, especially downtown, where nearly all the homeless services are currently located. We are not only improving the environment where people live, we're improving the environment where people visit. The Special Promotional Programs funding chart on page 288 of the IBA's report makes it seem at first look as if we're choosing between homelessness funding or arts and culture funding. When it comes to homelessness and arts and culture funding, it cannot be either or. The city budget has many different funding sources, and both homelessness and arts and culture should be funded to a reasonable level, while realizing that some reasonable cuts are likely in both departments to mitigate our deficit. Some of our biggest homeless program supporters have been the arts and culture community in Balboa Park. I want to thank Peter Kaminsky and the Balboa Park Cultural Partnership for their early support with safe sleeping. That has helped to mitigate the number of people sleeping in other areas of Balboa Park. How safe people feel when they're visiting our parks and visiting our city has an impact on our TOT revenues. We must make people feel safe when they're going to Balboa Park, when they're going to the convention center, our hotels and restaurants, and elsewhere in our city. If we cut our homelessness budget in the wrong place, we risk losing ground and we risk forcing more people onto the streets. That is why I will request that option A from the PowerPoint, which also appears on page 198 of the IBA's review, be the additional reductions, if we must have them, that are incorporated into the mayor's May revise. Option A reduces the number of beds at the 16th and Newton shelter, which year after year floods during the rainy season, which causes millions of dollars in additional cost and temporary relocation fees to our budget. City staff does a great job of getting the residents out of 16th and Newton and up to the Balboa Park Activity Center for safety during the floods, but it is very expensive and it does put a lot of strain on the system during those times. One additional point, I would like to clarify that when we see programs like the eviction prevention program being moved from economic development to homeless strategies and solutions, it makes it look like homeless strategies and solutions and TOT costs are going up an additional $3 million, when in reality, that is just shifting money from the general fund and economic development to TOT and homeless strategies and solutions. Historically, millions more in general fund and TOT went to HSSD, but thankfully Measure C has relieved both of those funds to some degree over the last few years. I want to thank the city's Homeless Strategies and Solutions Department for putting together this budget proposal. These were obviously very difficult decisions to make because of the limited budgetary situation that we find ourselves in. And I want to thank the many service providers and the many people who have come here today to speak about the impactful work that is being done to rebuild lives through our City of San Diego homelessness programs, from safe parking to safe sleeping to shelter beds, all the funds that we give to prevent homelessness. Thank you very much, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Whitburn. We'll go next to Councilmember Campillo.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Sarah, for your presentation and your hard work on this. Similar to earlier discussions we've had about parks and recreation and libraries, I'm seeing the presentation of options provided as a helpful way to start a conversation, but certainly not the only option to balance the budget. This is an area of our budget I have a lot of questions about, and I agree with my colleagues who've said for years that we need to do more. And I think that what we have in front of us, we can see a different and better path forward. We've seen a pattern throughout the process of this week where it does seem, as Councilmember Whitburn pointed out, that there's a pitting of two concepts against each other. I don't question whether the investment in homelessness is worthy. It's at once an economic issue and a behavioral health issue and a public safety issue and a humanitarian issue. But I want to ask questions to understand how what's proposed in any of those options that were on slide 9 are strategic. Certainly they're not optimal because of the amount of funding we have, but we're going to talk about that in a second, about why those particular areas. My first question is, given what I've heard from the public leading up to today, and I'm sure we're going to hear it in a minute when they are able to speak, what was the degree of coordination with stakeholders when we determined these reductions? Because our 5-year outlook for several years has shown that this year was going to be a very difficult year. And certainly after passing last year's budget, we knew that there was more cutting to be done. We had always hoped it'd be less than 120 million, but we could see it coming for about a year. What was the coordination? How early did we start talking to people we have contracts with, whether it's Father Joe's Villages or it's the Downtown Partnership or any other number of great groups, JFS, to say, we got reductions coming and we need to plan a year in advance?
Thank you, Councilmember. My answer is that it varies. I think after last year's budget cycle, we had quite a few conversations with folks, maybe not every single provider, on what next year will look like. And frank reality that not only this fiscal year, but the next fiscal year, it is going to hurt. So I can't commit to every single provider that I've had a conversation with. I can tell you I have had conversations with multiple providers about how devastating these cuts will probably continue to be, even after the cuts we took last year.
Certainly. Okay. I guess considering that this department is really has employees itself, but also is contracts with outside groups, when we have the mayor's office and the Department of Finance tell our internal departments, give me a 7% reduction recommendation, where's it going to come from? They obviously gave you that same number. At which point, since we have so many contracts, did you turn out to them and say, the mayor's told me to cut 7%, tell me, contractor, where can we cut 7% from your contract? How does that conversation go through so that we know that with a long runway, how to get this done in the most optimal way?
This one's hard because a significant amount of the funding in here did not have any contracts associated with it. That happened pretty quickly. So that runway was not very long.
Okay. All right. Slide 9, you gave us various options. I noticed in one you have medium reduction of eviction prevention program, small, medium, and then one that was very, very large. As we were looking at that one, can you explain why that was considered? Because I brought this up many times, and the question I often ask is, are we doing enough prevention?
Mhm.
You guys have adequately answered. It's not just prevention. There's 3, 4, 5 steps in the ladder. You got to fund each of them adequately. But what I hear from my constituents is prevention is what they want to see us spending a lot more money on. Tell me why the money in the eviction prevention program is better cut than something else.
It's not that it's better cut than something else. If I can take a step back and I explain how we got to these 3 options, that might help with a little bit of context. As we were looking at reductions, I think no matter what, no one's going to be happy with the reductions that are listed. No one would be happy if we swap one out or another. But when we look at the spectrum of services that we have, to your point, council member, on one end of that spectrum, we have prevention. On the absolute opposite end of that spectrum, we have shelter. And we have services in between those two. The thought process behind these options, and to Amy's point, I want to be very transparent. We are open to suggestions, input changes. You don't like it, you tell us. But looking at how we can keep the system from completely dismantling. So yes, we have eviction prevention on that list. That was a really tough decision. It was that or to put HIP on that list, for instance, and we know those people are receiving monthly resources. That would be a bigger hit to that constituency. We have shelter, on the other hand. We have bodies in those beds. To do all of one and all of one, not necessarily the case. We tried to come up with options that at least had a couple of opportunities, especially knowing that this council has different priorities. We know certain council members have priorities more for the front end, certain have for the other end. Certain council members would probably like this money to be spent somewhere else. That's the reality. That's kind of how we got to this process. I'm happy to speak on if I can speak on the shelters too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
How we came through up to those two. I've been before this body a couple of times with a comprehensive shelter strategy. In that strategy, I've been very clear that there are shelter options that are not permanent in nature.
Yes,
Two
right.
of those are 20th and B and 16th and Newton.
Right.
In addition to that, those two were identified, frankly, for a lot of the topographical issues associated with it. As Councilmember Whitburn mentioned, the 16th and Newton shelter has flooded 3 times. We have had to move 324 folks 3 times out of that shelter and had to repair it. 20th and B, similarly, that site floods as well. And so as we look towards permanency and the bad choices that we have in front of us, that was what our department came up with as the best available option. That being said, we are open to suggestions.
Okay. Well, so you gave me some good details there that say these particular spots, there's an environmental issue that leads to more cost, right? Okay. So what was the similar cost-benefit analysis of the eviction prevention program? To keep a person in their home certainly is less expensive than finding a shelter bed that we don't have much more of in the first place. So was there some sort of analysis that said, we don't think that this is paying off, it doesn't keep people in their houses, their homes long enough? What was the sort of granularity of effectiveness? Because you just pointed out, these things flood, that's expensive. We want to save that cost. That's a reasonable answer. But eviction prevention program, what was the, oh, this is not working, or this is not the highest use of the money? What was that data-driven analysis look like?
Frankly, it was to not disrupt the spectrum of interventions. So it's back to that spectrum where it's not all on one side and all on another. Eviction prevention being on that front end, that's why it was listed here.
Okay, so the eviction prevention program was balanced against other preventative programs that you feel is more effective.
More effective might not be the right phrasing, less disruptive to the elimination of the program.
Okay. Understanding this, I feel that when you have the conversation out with the public, with the folks who work in this discipline to try to help unhoused people, being able to say, we see very effectively this one, and we don't see as effective in this one, that jumps out so that we can understand the reasoning, even if we can disagree on the numbers. But on the slide, it makes it seem like that isn't what is valued. But I can hear what you're saying is actually that you think that that's the least bad option. Neil Good Day Center, $948,000 in budget savings, but the budget also includes $570,000 in program reduction wind down support. So essentially, we're only going to save $378,000 from net on not supporting Neil Good Day Center. In material costs, the city lose about $800,000 provided through our partnership with Father Joe's Villages. But there's also grant funding provided to them through other avenues. Looks like we're only saving roughly $400,000 to lose around $1 million from a nonprofit and partner resource, including the individuals who won't be served. What was that $400,000 balanced against? Did you have a spreadsheet? Did you have a table that said, if we're gonna get $400,000 back, we need $400,000 more effective there? Because I hear year after year that this is one of the most effective uses of what is really $400,000 and not $948 in budget savings.
So just to level set and be perfectly
Please.
transparent, that $570,000 is not just associated for the wind down of the Neil Good Day Center. That $570,000 will have to be applied across the board. So for
Okay.
instance, if we choose to eliminate a shelter program, either one, for instance, we are going to need funding and probably a suspension of intakes, and that will be a portion of it. So I will just caveat with that.
Please,
Your
thank you.
overarching question, however, unfortunately, of course, the Neil Good Day Center does provide a significant amount of services to the community, but to your point about efficacy, we had to make tough choices about housing-focused programs. We did identify that this one, although provides great services, Father Joe's is a wonderful partner, the housing placement rate isn't as high as other programs, so this one did come to the top of that list.
Okay, so there was some piece of data that made you say, this is what we're gonna go with as opposed to this.
Yes.
Okay. But do you do that with every single contract, every single program, every single provider? You have a sense of success rate here versus not here, and that's what it was based on?
Yes.
Okay. With the years, how long have you been keeping that data?
We have years' worth of data.
Okay. Do you communicate to the providers, I'm seeing less success in this than we are hoping for? What can we do to have that push up? Because we want to work with all these providers, serve all the people they're serving. Do you communicate to them like, hey, next year when there's a big budget deficit, it's not a threat, it's just the effectiveness is not as good.
I do think we hold our providers very much so accountable between ourselves and the San Diego Housing Commission. If something doesn't look right, we do address it. I want to be cautious, just knowing the good work that Father Joe's does do. Although there's not housing placements, they do provide services at that site. And those are life-saving services. And please don't get me wrong. It's just unfortunately, we had to make a decision.
I'm not getting you wrong.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that this is, when people's lives are on the line in such a concrete way, human suffering is so bad that there is actually not just, it's a bad decision here, but there's a concrete number you looked at and said, I'm sorry, but it's got to be this one. And that's what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah.
Very briefly on the Veteran Village of San Diego, they said they don't need $2.4 million currently budgeted. See, the Housing Commission has requested it. There's a reference in their May memo that the Veterans Village San Diego is struck and requests the $2.4 million to the location to be determined. I see Lisa. So I got an organization saying they don't want our money, and but I still see a memo from you all saying we want that money and we're going to put it somewhere else. What's going on?
Sorry about that. Good morning, council member. When we were working with Veterans Village of San Diego, this was last fall, we had originally built a budget, excuse me, looking for about 70 beds at their site that were at that time unfunded and underutilized. They now, at this time, have committed those beds to another program. So that site is no longer available. We understand and respect that. We kept the money ask in the memo because this is opioid settlement funding. It can go for a very specific thing, which is those recovery beds. We still feel they're very much needed in the system. We released an RFQ in late February looking for providers and sites to move this funding to, which is why we've kept that budget ask in. We're looking at sites right now so that we can potentially program that funding somewhere else, understanding that VVSD has other plans for their beds.
Okay, so we're not gonna be doing that project then with them. Correct.
Not with VVSD, but we're looking for other sites through our RFQ process.
Okay, thank you. Just very briefly, how is coordination this year with the county compared to previous years? Because given that they are responsible for a lot of what's going on. How has that relationship looked over the last year? I know that there was disagreement over reducing a shelter. Tell me about that.
I can absolutely speak to just my personal interactions. I will say, I think seeing the $1.5 million investment into the DV shelter we're very grateful for that. I can only imagine kind of the situation we would be in if we didn't have that 1.5 million additional to keep that very successful program open. I'd also like to maybe touch on, I think public health is doing a really wonderful job of helping keep our constituency safe, really monitoring vaccination rates across our shelter system. So I would say that has progressed far more.
Understood. Okay. Better this year than the prior years. Okay. I'm eager to hear what my colleagues have to say about this. Obviously, this is amongst the toughest areas for city government to address, has been for decades. Hearing from the leadership of Father Joe's Villages, hearing directly from Deacon Jim, knowing they're in agreement with what Councilmember Whitburn says. Obviously, I've talked a lot about prevention, but the grand scale of what we're about to see with the federal government cutting funds for housing, the flow of people who are unsheltered is, in my fear, going to be much higher than we've seen. And we've seen numbers and decreased in unsheltered housing over the last year. So I like the way Councilmember Whitburn put it. When people are going to die, they need a bed so that they don't. So I'm going to be looking at, I definitely agree with my constituents who talk about prevention, but we hear the experts out there saying shelter beds immediately to prevent death. So I will be looking at that as we move forward with suggestions, and I appreciate your good work in helping people stay alive.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Campillo. We'll go next to Councilmember Elo Rivera.
All right, thank you, Council President. Thank you, Sarah, Amy, Salina, for your analysis. I want to start by thanking Councilor Whitburn for what you shared. I think and I've said this to many people, there's nothing more haunting to me than walking out the door of this building and seeing folks sleeping there. It is a daily reminder of the work that needs to be done. And I appreciate that you see it and you care about it in the way that you do. And we can't look away from it. So thank you for continuing to see it and commit to working on it. Because each of the people who are out there deserve that commitment. I appreciated Councilmember Campillo's questions about communication with some of the service providers who will be impacted by the cuts. And Sarah, I think I heard you when you said there was kind of this kind of general heads up given last year. Hey, we're in a tough time and it's only going to get more tough. And as that general concern started to narrow, I am concerned about the timeline that we are giving folks to pivot. So I do want to understand, and I don't know whose job this is to communicate these things. I don't know if it's yours. I don't know if it's someone in the mayor's office. But what is in fact, I'm going to actually step back because it's not specific to you. I had similar questions yesterday. So let me step back. When a constituency group or a community partner is going to be impacted by budget cuts, what is the mayor's office's philosophy on what that communication should look like, when that communication should happen? What is our standard in place for communicating with community partners who we depend on to serve San Diegans?
Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. Generally speaking, it is a team effort between Homelessness Strategies and Solutions and the mayor's office to communicate with the providers. acknowledging that budget decisions are moving quickly ahead of the first draft release. So that does give us limited time to do it, but we have had conversations with them, some providers more often than others, especially considering impacts for that.
Right, but is there a standard practice in place? Is it as soon as we start to consider it, we're going to check in with them to understand what the impacts would actually be? Is it once a final decision is made, we're going to tell them a final decision is made? What's the standard operating procedure?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's the standard per se because, for example, right now there is no final decisions. We have options on the table for all of us to consider and to continue those conversations.
Right. That was actually my concern, is that there is no standard operating procedure. And as a result of that, we are leaving community partners, from homeless service providers to leaders in the arts and culture community to youth, youth advocates, in a situation where they don't even have time to build the bridge to where they need to get. And it makes our job that much more difficult, because as we're trying to weigh the impacts of the decisions, groups that might be able to mitigate the impacts of the budget don't have the time to do that. And I know that this is a process that involves a lot of evolution and considerations, but I think that speaks to the necessity of bringing folks into the fold earlier rather than later, to understand which groups are best positioned to pivot, which groups aren't, the on-the-ground understanding of what those decisions would be, all of that, just that earlier communication is so important, and it's not happening, and that's super concerning. Neil Day Center, I'm going to use as an example. I understand why. I can understand why it's a thing that the city would pivot from. However, if it were to go away completely, I think we'd also agree that there'd be huge impacts. And without giving Father Joe's time, I think we're going to leave the city worse off than we would have if we would have given them some more time. So I'm going to follow up a little bit on the options that we were presented. I was really appreciative to see that the Housing Instability Prevention Program and Eviction Prevention Program were fully funded in the proposed budget. And then I learned in the IBA report that actually further cuts would be needed and EPP is on the chopping block. That was frustrating, disappointing, and I have a huge issue with that. We've had this conversation on the dais for years now. The role that prevention plays, not just in keeping, I'll definitely need the extra 3, Council President, not just the role that prevention plays in keeping people off the streets, but what that means for the people who are on the streets today. Because more people on the streets means those who are on the streets are competing with more people for the too few beds that exist. The service providers, the outreach workers, their work grows, which means the people who are on the streets today have less attention when they already don't have the attention that they need. So it feels penny wise and pound foolish to cut prevention programs that we know are working. The shelters that you showed, Sarah, I don't know if you can pull those back up. There was a slide with the various options that we have. And with the clear understanding and caveat, the slide right before that. The one that shows, one more, there we go. That each shelter has a different population with folks with different needs. The exit, the success rate, the exit rate is extremely important to me. Can you help us understand I'm like, I can do rough math as I look at that, but length of stay, total cost when you factor in length of stay, how that weighs into the decision-making process of what to pull back from, what to invest more in.
Sure, thank you, Councilmember. To your first point, I think one thing that's crucial is that we obviously have an array and spectrum of services. So in addition to the 2 shelters listed in the proposed reductions, there are also shelters that accommodate that same subpopulation. So there's shelters for single adults, and there's also safe sleeping at OLOT. With that, though, if it's helpful, I do have for you, of course, I think you all received kind of the cost per bed night of what we're looking at, but I know that that's not necessarily always of interest to you. I think one thing that might be important with
It's
length
not that
of
it's
stay.
not of interest here, and I'll just, the clock's been running while that answer was provided. It's not that it's not of interest to me. I think that it needs to be taken into account based on the length of stay as well.
So I have the estimated cost per housing outcome for 16th and 20th and B. For 20th and B, the estimated cost per housing outcome is just shy of $47,000. For 16th and Newton, the cost per housing outcome is $94,000.
Okay.
And then
And the other options that are up there?
I do have it for family reunification, which is just shy of $3,000. And I do have it for Aero Safe Parking, which is $8,300.
Do we have it for safe sleeping? Do we have it for
Safe sleeping was $46,950.
almost 47 as well? Okay. I appreciate that. And I think it speaks to the importance of prevention, because we're the prevention piece on a per person basis is significantly less, whether that's housing instability prevention program or the eviction prevention program. Those folks who don't get the help that they need end up on the streets. If they end up in one of our shelters, it can range from $47,000 to $94,000 to eventually get them back to where they were, which was in a house. So that is why I continue to emphasize the prevention piece. It's not because I want to prioritize the needs of people who are in housing over the people who are on the streets. The people who are on the streets have greater needs. It's because I believe we can serve more people on the streets if we keep more people in their home and actually begin to see a reduction in the number of people who are on the streets. So pivoting away from prevention when we know it's working and when we know the costs are when folks become homeless, again, I have huge concerns with. And I said it a couple days ago, so I'm going to do it. I heard a false choice between homelessness, the housing instability prevention program and eviction prevention program. That is definitely a false choice. And I will acknowledge that I'm in a minority here, but knowing that the role that the effect that homelessness has on public safety, both for the individuals impacted and the community as a whole, seeing these sort of choices put in front of us while the police budget grows $15 million, that is one of those things that I am really wrestling with. So thank you, Sarah, for the responses. I appreciate the direct answers to the questions that I asked. I will reiterate how frustrated I am in the lack of communication with the partners who we depend on to do the work with people experiencing homelessness and preventing people from experiencing homelessness. And we'll ask that we do better on that front, because we can't make informed decisions if the experts on the ground don't have the chance to provide their expertise to us. Thank you, President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ela Rivera. We'll go next to Council President Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mr. Harmon, and the team for the presentation. Let me start by noting that the mayor has stated that homelessness is one of the core services of the city. As we heard yesterday, it's one of the 4 pillars for this budget. And I'm just going to take the liberty of noting that what's not in those 4 pillars, since we had a long discussions about them in the last couple of days, are libraries and parks, which I think is why we see hundreds of cuts to staff and the proposal of options to close entire library branches or recreation centers. Given the mayor's high priority for homelessness, I think that's why I'm even more perplexed as to why he can't seem to present us a clear plan in this budget. So here we are again, this time apparently on an item that is one of the mayor's top priorities, and he wants us to pick between his options. So let me dive into a couple of curious things that I see in these options. I'm going to ask you all to help me answer some of this, but first off, Sarah, what's the shelter capacity in our shelter programs on average any given day?
Low.
Down to
It hovers
97,
around-
98% full?
Exactly.
And that is not counting safe sleeping?
Safe sleeping, right now, if I checked a couple days ago, that's hovering anywhere between about 70 to 95% on any given day.
And I would note that number has really not changed since the day I've been in office, and probably for most of us, I imagine. And so I think, is it safe to note that if we were to reduce shelter capacity, we should expect unsheltered homelessness to rise?
That would probably be a fair comparison. The only way in which I could say that we would be able to meet the same amount of services we have today is the influx of diversion dollars that we'll have into the system. So for instance, we have $1.3 million in HAP going towards diversion. That specifically at this point is set aside for shelter flow through. But there's only so many people that are eligible for diversion as we move forward. So it's possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Given that, I mean, I would agree with Councilmember Whitburn on the importance of maintaining shelter capacity. I mean, is that something the mayor agrees on?
Yes.
Which I find interesting since the options seem to be full of considerations to close or wind down shelter operations. Sarah, I don't think you were the one who made the decision to move the eviction prevention program under your department, correct?
I did not make that decision.
Casey?
Yeah, that was an operational decision to align, as I commented on yesterday, Council President Pro Tem, to align budget and funding in the appropriate department. We've got a lot of relationships, MOUs and other things between HSSD and Housing Commission. We felt that money was better positioned within the HSSD budget than in EDD.
Thank you for explaining that again. Of all things under homelessness, Amy, you highlighted this a little bit, and so if the IBA could just help us again understand, what were the items on the top of the priority lists supported by council members when it came to homelessness?
I believe a fair number of those priorities did focus on prevention. So reiterating support for the Housing Instability Prevention Program, the Eviction Prevention Program, additional resources for prevention and diversion at the Housing Commission.
So the eviction prevention program was high on that list. As I recall, 7 council members supporting it,
Yes. I
only
believe so.
exceeded by the Housing Instability Prevention Program, which had 8. And so I would agree with Councilmember Whitburn, who notes that the only reason the HSSD budget looks like it's actually not going down is because this program has been moved into it. That's a significant amount of funding. But I'll also reiterate that similar to what I said yesterday, it's an odd move to make at the time that we're in, because logistically, I understand the operational decision, but again, that department is being proposed in this budget to be moved into the department. And at the exact same time, in order to make cuts to the department, it is in the position, it is in the list of options for every single option to be reduced. So does the mayor care about what's on the top of the list of the council's priorities?
Councilmember, I'll just note and reiterate what the Office of the Independent Budget Analyst said, is that these are options which you certainly have the flexibility to consider and move around with. So these are not the only options that you have.
Do you have a recommendation of the options we should take?
I'll let, I don't know if Sarah wants to take that answer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Hartman helped quite a bit in putting these options together. I'm asking from an administration standpoint, if there's a preference for the options that you'd like us to take.
Operationally speaking, I think option A would probably be the option that has the least operational interruptions.
Can you outline option A for us once again?
Sure. Option A would be the partial reduction of 16th and Newton, the elimination of Central Elementary safe parking, the elimination of security at Old Central Library, and the partial reduction of the eviction prevention program.
How much of a reduction are we looking at 16th and Newton and for the eviction prevention program?
For 16th and Newton, it would be 2.978 million. That'll be approximately 200 to 250 beds, and the partial reduction of EPP at 200,000.
Could I ask, Mr. Harmon, if eviction prevention program was not under your department, what else would you have suggested removing instead? Impossible question to answer, right?
You're just making it so more people hate me.
No. So actually don't answer that question, because I think that's my point to make, that these options are somewhat silly, because the reality is without eviction prevention being moved into them, every single one of them would require us to consider significant reductions to shelter operations. I mean, it would seem.
The reality is a significant portion of our budget is to fund shelter, some odd 60%, some odd like that. So when we're looking at a large target reduction number at 3.7 million, there's going to have to be shelter at some point in it. That's the reality. It is very unfortunate, but it is the reality just based on how our budget is structured.
This budget isn't driven by a coherent strategic framework that's somehow aligned with the council's priorities. And in fact, yes, we all have different preferences up here, whether it is advancing prevention programs or maintaining shelter. I don't think those are two choices that we have to make against each other, especially when homelessness is being pitched as one of the pillar priorities within this budget. So that's why I would encourage my colleagues not to pick between those options, but rather to determine which of the shelters and programs you would prioritize protecting. And furthermore, we have to be asking what reductions are not being considered. I will point out that in all three of the options, there is not a single reduction of staff. And this is not an ask that we reduce members of Mr. Harmon's team, but you had 15 full-time employees last year. I assume that carries over in this budget this year as well. And so in a time where we are suggesting austerity across the city and making hundreds of reductions in libraries and parks, because they are not one of the 4 core pillars, we're not making a single reduction option within this department while presenting the council members with options to eliminate the shelters that we're trying to defend or the prevention programs that we care about. It's a choice that doesn't make sense. Let's talk about real logistics for a moment. The Neil Good Day Center, and I'll take my 3 minutes now, just since I know that's gonna tick. I understand that there have been discussions with Father Joe's, which operates the center, and I might invite you up here just to talk about it, because I know in our discussions you've mentioned interest in trying to find ways to operate it, even if the city did not have the capacity to support that.
Yes, Councilman Josh Bohannon with Father Joe's Villages, and that is correct. We are committed to the services that the day center operates. Without city funding, we would continue our best to operate, but at significantly reduced capacity, less days, less services offered. We wouldn't be able to give storage. We would have less security, so there'd be less opportunity for respite for individuals, operating less days of the week. So we've gone through that scenario. We've also worked through other scenarios. If the site itself is closed, what are some backup plans that we have as an organization, and how can we gather together our existing resources to fill the gap that would be left by the day center? But that takes time that we need to fill together.
Thank you for answering that question. And maybe more so now to the Housing Commission as a whole, if someone, and I know Lisa just stepped out, great timing. We can wait until she gets back. Or someone could possibly answer this. Thanks, Lisa. So for both the Neil Good Day Center and 16th and Newton, if any portion of those operations were to be reduced or wound down, what would the timing be in order to do that? I mean, it's not like we say we're gonna shut down a number of shelter beds at 16th and Newton, those folks are going to go July 1st.
Right, right. So our recommendation for 16th and Newton, because it's such a large shelter and based on historical attrition rates, what would happen is we'd have to freeze intakes across the system. We'd have to look for alternative sites, and we'd have to move people out of 16th and Newton into those spaces that open up in shelter across the system. So based on historical attrition rates, when we freeze intakes, we're looking at probably about a 9-month wind down process at 16th and Newton in order to make sure that everybody that's in that shelter today finds shelter or housing in another location. We would all obviously use a lot of our diversion resources to try to focus on that too and get people out of shelter straight into housing. For Neil Good Day Center, we would recommend probably about a 6-month transition so that we could strategically plan how to place those services throughout the community, understanding that Councilmember Whitburn has heard a lot from the business community and the community in that area about Neil Good Day Center, and that it doesn't really feel like it's meeting the community's needs. To meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness, our recommendation would be to try to stand up those resources throughout the city, not just the downtown area, and leverage existing programs. We would recommend about a 6-month planning process for that. So maybe about a 6-month wind down so that those service needs are still being met for the people who need them.
Thank you for sharing that. When we look at the budget options that are being presented, are the timelines for potential wind downs or attrition needs factored into the options, or would that actually necessitate a speedier wind down to accomplish that budget savings?
I can confirm that it does account for the wind down Lisa mentioned for 16th and Newton. I would have to get back to you on the wind down for the Neil Good Day Center.
And in that option, how much is that reduction to 16th and Newton?
In option A,
Yeah,
it's short of 3 million and about 200 to 250 beds.
basically the entire site?
The site's
Close to-
324 to 326.
So, and I know we worked on this together. So we kind of worked on what that budget would look like together. That's assuming there's sort of about 120 beds that we can stand up elsewhere. If there's not, it's going to take longer, right? And we could go over that. We could not end up achieving that same amount of savings if we can't find an additional site. And also, obviously, those bed funds would need to move with it. So I think there's still some work to be done based on where the council lands.
Thank you. And finally, let me talk about some big picture items that I think we do need to consider as we move forward. One is that HAP funding from the state as we know it, as I understand, is set at $500 million currently in the proposed budget. That is a significant reduction than some of the previous years we've seen, but there is an effort ongoing at the state to try to increase that funding. And the state's budget doesn't complete until the end of June after our budget process. So if HAP funding were to be increased from $500 million to something between that and the $1 billion or so that we've seen in the past, what would be the first programs we would look to additionally protect, reinstate, to keep moving if that funding was unlocked?
I think it's a tough question to answer. What if we were to receive the full 1 billion, we would anticipate an additional $12-ish million into the system. We likely wouldn't have access to those funds until at least late towards the end of the fiscal year. It's highly likely that that additional funding that we're not planning on would have to help fill gaps in FY28. Although if the process speeds up and we get that money faster, then I think we could reconsider. But right now, there's a big unknown.
I think this is an important discussion. It's one of the reasons why I believe that this council, although we have not historically been able to exercise this, really does need the ability to offer mid-year budget adjustments because there are changes in significant factors that could really alter what is happening here. Even a portion of that funding would replenish every dollar that is being thrown on the table right now to eliminate eviction prevention programs, to eliminate shelter programs, or significantly reduce them. And I would not like to see us conduct these wind downs only to turn around if the state changes course by the end of June. I think that really does close my questions. I appreciate the answers here. I agree that homelessness is a challenge that the city must continue to address. I think there's a fair argument whether it's any more or less a core service these days at the city than anything else we provide. I have a hard time arguing that it is any more so important than the libraries and parks that our residents visit every single day. And It was not the story in the city a decade ago when little to no funding was dedicated to this. And so if we're going to approach this, I continue to believe it has to be a collaborative effort. The county participation is obviously something that is good to hear, but we need more of it as we move forward. And we need a plan. We need something that is clear, that's being presented to us, that is not just a series of numbers that results in shelter bed loss or people being put back on the streets. We need an understanding of how the city plans to move forward with the limited dollars we've got. We also need a proposal that allows us to consider what happens if the state does add additional funding that we have often counted on. Otherwise, we're just sitting here spending these hearings arguing over options that literally don't get us anywhere. And so I thank you for the exercise, and I appreciate the additional time. Council President.
Everybody's getting a lot of additional time. This is an important conversation, so I really appreciate my colleagues' questions and Sarah's and Chris's, your responses. Amy wants to weigh in again.
Thank you, Council President. I think I want to just quickly reiterate that council has the option to take or support any of the options presented as is, but you also have the option to provide modifications, provide a different proposal of reduction packages. So to the extent that prevention is something you want to protect and you don't want to see any cuts to eviction prevention program, we will note that under option C, there is $275,000 in savings associated with eliminating Arrow Drive safe parking that is currently being implemented in current year without any significant impacts. So to the extent that you would like to swap any of the proposed cuts to EPP with that reduction for safe parking instead, that is something to consider.
Council President, if I can just quickly respond to that, my only answer to that would be, and this is really to my colleagues, let's stop sitting here pretending like we have to take any of these options. I think at the end of the day, with the lack of a plan being presented to us, it's inherent upon us as a council to actually deliver a plan that we think we can pass for this year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Pro Tem Wade, I think that's really the key to this whole week, isn't it? So we'll go back to Councilmember Whitburn.
Thank you, Council President. I really appreciate the thoughtful comments of Council Members Campillo and Ela Rivera and Council President Pro Tem Lee. I agree with the Council President Pro Tem that it is remarkable that we are looking to close a shelter at the same time the shelters are full, and the potential for that to send more people out onto the streets. If we have to trim the shelter budget, a shelter that floods is probably the best option. Although my first choice would be not to close that. I also appreciate the commitment that we have heard to try to ensure that if that shelter does have to close, that nobody would be put out onto the street, and the efforts to accommodate those folks elsewhere. I also appreciate my colleagues' comments about the importance of prevention. And I could not agree more. I mean, I have consistently supported the eviction prevention program and the housing instability prevention program. I think shelter and prevention are both essential. They serve somewhat different populations at times. Some of the folks who are facing eviction and housing stability in many cases are those facing blunt economic challenges. Some of the folks who need shelter are oftentimes those who have experienced a myriad of other more fundamental challenges that sometimes result in chronic homelessness. But we need to help those facing economic hardship stay in their homes. And we need to help those experiencing chronic homelessness get off the streets. I do have, hearing the comments of my colleagues, I do have one question about option A. The partial reduction of 16th and Newton is listed as essentially a $3 million reduction.
Yes.
The partial reduction of the eviction prevention program is listed as a $200,000 reduction.
That's correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
The $200,000 reduction to the eviction prevention program is probably a larger percentage of that particular budget than $200,000 would be to the 16th and Newton. What if, let me just ask you, what if we did not take the $200,000 out of the eviction prevention program and instead made it a $3.1 million reduction to 16th and Newton? What would that look like in terms of the wind down of 16th and Newton?
Councilmember, if you don't mind, we would probably need to run the numbers with the Housing Commission just to have a full, to be perfectly honest on what that wind down would look like, because we would have to calculate just what that burn rate would be for the total budget.
I understand.
So
Okay,
it
fair
would,
enough.
presumably you would have fewer beds available once we get down to the right number that'll equalize us for the rest of the fiscal year's contract. So I would have to do a little bit of
And I
math for
appreciate,
that.
and I appreciate your wanting to look at the data. The last thing I do, and one thing that I would not be able to support is doing something that would actually result in forcing people in a shelter to end up on the street. But if there is a way to manage that such that we can continue to fund the eviction prevention program, I think that would be worthy of exploration. Okay, well, I mean, we could look and see what the potential there is and revisit that. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitburn, for those follow-up questions. Thank you to the department. I'm going to take a slightly different track, kind of level set, how we got where we are. I think we're probably around the 1-year anniversary that the city attorney's office prevailed in Measure C being passed. Pretty big deal. Can you imagine where we would be if that litigation had not been successful? What is it, 35 million in this year's budget?
And last year's.
Can you imagine what would have happened if the Labor Council, Building Trades, social justice organizations, and the Lodging Association, unlikely partners, hadn't got together to put Measure C, worked very hard to get it passed way back in the day. To the point that Pro Tem Lee mentioned, there's 500 million in the current budget for HAP. We didn't always have 500 million. It'd been $1 billion, it got cut. There was strong feelings that we didn't know what number might be put in. We still don't know where the governor is going to land on HAP, given some of his talking points. Has the mayor's office been active in Sacramento to argue to restore the 1 billion?
100%, Council President. The mayor has made a handful of visits to Sacramento in the last several months to half a year to advocate to the state legislature and the governor on the importance of HAP. We have made clear to him the implications if we're not able to get that full funding. And he continues to advocate not just there as an individual mayor, but as part of the Big City Mayors Coalition with the 10 largest cities in California.
Okay. The challenge and the pro tem was quite eloquent in your answer, Sarah, that even if that happens, do we take budget cutting actions today? No, excuse me, not the budget actions, but we take the implementation of an adopted budget when that money is out there, maybe. Also remind us anything that we're actually eligible and qualified for. Have we gotten all the money from the feds? I'll say that with a smile, and the state that we're entitled to that would make the budget happen? Or is there anything outstanding?
I'm not entirely sure what would be outstanding. Obviously, there's a larger conversation about what just federal funds are coming into the system as a whole that tangentially affect our department.
Okay. I'm going to be rude and correct you on one thing from my perspective about the spectrum. You'll hear me during the course of the weeks talk about why that I don't like about BRC, because we tend to take these conversations in silos. This department is here, so we talk about this department. We drill in. My colleagues did a fabulous job. And I would argue that the spectrum is really prevention and housing. People that are housed, keep them in the house, and to create the pipeline that gets people into housing. So what EDD does, what Housing Commission does, trying to supplement a very complicated funding mechanism to build affordable housing is really what we really need to do. And in the meantime, as Councilman Whitburn and my colleagues have been very eloquent, how do we help those folks that are not there yet, either not ready or there's no housing there for them to move into? And that's the larger conversation. So it's not only what we do with this department for that interim, but Bridge to Home that we didn't even really talk about in yesterday's conversation, advocacy to make it easier. We talked about DSD and their expediting permit processes. So I think it's important to kind of remember all those other components again that gets us to where we're at. So let me drill in. Some of this might be repeat of good comments and questions that my colleague raised. I'm going to ask you a basic: eviction prevention and diversion. Help. These people probably are smart enough to know. Help me, remind me what's the difference when we use those two different nomenclatures.
Sure, it depends on kind of how you slice it. So I would consider eviction prevention more of a traditional prevention program. Diversion can be more of a, flex one time for folks maybe that are already existing on the street, but diversion doesn't have to be limited to that. So diversion can span, I think, a little bit more of prevention and diversion. I would call eviction prevention more so you're already in that home versus diversion resources obviously can be used in our shelter system amongst our unsheltered community. But I do think there is overlap in that.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree, maybe I'll use different words, but I would agree with my colleagues that it is inhumane to think that your choices between shelter and getting folks off the street into a shelter or something off the street versus prevention and keeping someone who is, or a family that is currently housed and keeping them housed. Or, as you said, one little chunk of money that would take someone who is on the street and actually get them back, whether that's family reunification that seems to have a high degree of success, seems to be a little more cost effective. It's people centered, not dollars. So I'm also supportive of funding eviction prevention as well, given the success that we see with those programs, as well as family reunification, given the success that we've seen. And I know that the success of those is not just about the dollars, but the service providers and the case managers and how they work with those individuals to identify them, give them the options, and get them on to a better path of success, which simply kind of means housing. I think this has been asked several different times, and you've very graciously answered it every single time. I'm still a little confused about a proposal that doesn't, 16th and Newton's a problem, right? It's a huge number of beds, but it has an infrastructure problem, right? You have a dry winter, which we don't want. It's good all year round. We have a winter. The partial, is that because we're not partially closing it, but it's how long it would take to close it, and that's why there's reduction? Or are you actually thinking about keeping some beds in 16th and Newton? Or is it, I think what Lisa kind of mentioned, that is like, no, we're going to figure out how to save 100+ beds someplace else that we haven't identified. So what does that line item mean to you?
At this point, with the proposal in front of you, the underlying result would be a reduction in beds at 16th and Newton. A future decision of that site would come with additional layers of conversation.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question that everybody in this room knows the answer to. Have we found a replacement for 16th and Newton? A physical location?
No.
Okay. Let me circle back with the same question about, it's hard to think that we're going to spend precious dollars repairing, relocating. As humane as all that effort is, those are not where we should be spending our dollars. Closing 16th and Newton isn't a good option either, as everybody I think has stated. Neil Good Day Center. I think a lot of the comments we're going to hear today from the public is going to talk about Neil Good. One can argue that it's inhumane, given the condition that Neil Good is, and everybody's talked about what that is. We can also talk about how humane it is, because it, even if for the poor physical condition, it is an extraordinary service that we can't seem to find. Have we had any success in terms of finding an alternative site? Not talking about the funding, that's a different question, but a physical space that would replace Neil Good, because nobody seems to be willing to put in money to fix it to a better condition. I assume the answer is no, but
I don't have a physical space at this point.
okay.
Yeah, the answer is no, Council President.
So I think the Navigation Center, which I think is called the Hub now, its life is pretty short, right?
Mhm.
That won't be around for much longer?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Because it could be converted,
Correct. Into
torn
housing.
down and rebuilt to affordable housing. So I know that was one thing that people were floating around, people being me. So, I guess I'll close with the last comment that Council President Pro Tem Lee, options are being put in front of us. At some point, the budget is not the mayor's budget, it is our budget. It's much harder for us to navigate budget decisions, given the complexity, given the interrelationship, given this funding strings, as you remind us of. But on the other hand, that's kind of where we're at. So to the mayor's office, keep us informed about HAP in terms of what the council can do to encourage our representatives up there, and especially the governor, about how important it is. I will say that I did join PATH and other providers up in Sacramento, and the love they gave for what the city is doing was pretty extraordinary. On the housing side, that we're creating this pathway or pipeline to housing, that we are actually quite serious on how we spend our dollars and how we're building housing. Not enough. No one getting a pat on the deck, no mission accomplished sign, but there is recognition. I think that serves us very well in terms of talking with the governor's office to get that back up to $1 billion and the humanity that goes along with that. So anyway, I think I'm going to close there with that. Thank you, Sarah, your entire team. Thank you to all the providers that you contract with. And we'll start to dig in and see where we can land. With that, we'll close this item. And unlike the previous days, we only have one topic on this item. So not seeing anybody else in the lights, no additional comments by the IBA. I don't know how you're going to be able to help us, but we're really going to lean into the IBA. Not for policy decisions, that's our role, but numbers running is what you all do very well. I think it's going to be critically important. So before I go to public comment, I made this observation yesterday, since I'm chairing the meeting. I think most of you know, and if you don't, the refreshment room, the hallway, and the bathrooms have speakers, so everything that is said here is heard. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we still have a quorum. I know some people disagree. We have a quorum, in my opinion. We're going to continue with this. Every comment you hear can be heard in the back if they're not sitting in the chair up here. So with that, please, Sarah, please proceed with public comment on sub-item I.
Thank you, Council President. Sub-item I, homelessness strategies and solutions, is now open. Each speaker will have 1 minute. We've received 52 speaker slips here in chambers. If I call your name, if you can please come to the front of the room, and if you've been seated time, if you can please be sure that people that seated time are in the room. I'll call your name and you can just indicate with a wave. We will begin with Swade Johnson. Your group will be followed by Jacob Edwards and Teresa Smith and Josh Bonin. And Swade, you have been seated time by Robinique. Is Robinique present? Oh, thank you. Karen? And Carla? Great. And so you will have a total of 4 minutes on the clock in front to manage. Please begin.
All right, thank you, Council President and the members of City Council for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sway Johnson, and I'm proud to serve as a part of the Unhoused Care Team with the Downtown San Diego Partnership Foundation. Every day, our teams, which include coordinated outreach, the Family Reunification Program, the Hub, Shelter at Lot O, and our Workforce Readiness Program, we're working directly on the streets with individuals who do experience homelessness. We're building trust, connecting people to services, and helping people ultimately move towards stability. We have seen real progress through the city's investments in coordinated homeless response. The Safe Sleeping Program has provided hundreds of individuals with safer and more stable environment while reducing impacts to the surrounding neighborhoods and the people connected and connecting people to housing, healthcare, identification services, and case management. For many individuals, it's been the first steps towards recovery. We've also seen a lot of success through our coordinated street outreach by working closely with the city's Homelessness Strategies Department and our partners, including ESD, SDPD, 211, the Housing Commission, and outreach organizations across the region. We've been able to improve coordination, reduce duplication, and connect people to more resources faster than ever before. Additionally, through our Workforce Readiness Program, we are helping individuals who are experiencing homelessness reconnect to employment opportunities, earn income, rebuild confidence, and ultimately transition into housing through connected supportive services. These programs are proving that when people are given the opportunity, support, and dignity, that lives can change. We want to thank the city and the Homeless Strategies Department for their partnership and leadership. But we also know that there is still much more work that we can do. I don't think anyone, including us service providers, would say that we are anywhere near where we need to be yet. We see every day that with additional resources, stronger regional coordination, and expanded services, we can do even more. That is why we respectfully ask for your continued support and funding for these critical programs. We also ask for your advocacy to ensure the city of San Diego increases its partnership and presence in our streets, particularly in addressing the growing mental health and behavioral health crisis that frontline outreach workers encounter every day. Homelessness is not a challenge that any one agency can solve alone, but together through partnership, accountability, sustained investment, we can continue to make meaningful progress for both our unhoused neighbors and our communities. Thank you for our time. Thank you for your time and continued leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacob Edwards, please approach the lectern. You will have 1 minute.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of City Council. I would like to offer a special thank you to all the human service professionals. Do the hard work every day in the trenches, supporting homeless services. Thank you for what you do. City Council, I think it's time that we start confronting things at this City Hall for what they are. We confront things for what things are and not what things appear to be. Enough is enough. I would like to say, for what's going on at the Safe Sleep sites, the true intent behind those sites is completely unacceptable. The disposal of U.S. citizens is completely unacceptable. That should not be tolerated. I hope the governor's office is paying attention to these city council meetings, that the governor's office needs to be well aware that cutting homeless services is not acceptable whatsoever, that homeless services are very important for the stability and well-being of our communities. Governor, you must not cut funding for
Thank
our
you. This does complete your time.
homelessness services.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, City Council.
Our next group is Teresa Smith, and you have been seated time by Daniel Rubin. Is Daniel present? Thank you. Kelly Spoon, Nancy Vera, and JJ? Great, so you will have a total of 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, council members, and thank you for your time. As many of you know, my name is Teresa Smith, and I am the CEO of Dreams for Change and the operator of the 20th and B Safe Sleep Site, and 2/3 of the O site. I wanted to start by telling you why Safe Sleep is important to me. And it started with one of our early clients that I was able to connect with. Sean came to us as a carefree hippie who only really wanted to just live peacefully outside and not be harassed. He had asked for a referral into the site, so I alerted our San Diego Hot team to go find him and bring him on in. They knew exactly who he was because he had spent 20 years out there on the street. So they brought him over to us. And we spent 6 months just going to Sean, hey, how can we help you? We're here to help. And he'd come back to us, I'm fine, I got my tent and not being harassed. Then we started watching his health decline. And we kept offering medical services. Let us get you connected, let us get you help. Again, he was just fine. Then all of a sudden there was a knock on the door. It was Sean. He was ready for that medical assistance. That led to case management, that led to housing. And now we're a year and a half later and he's still in that same apartment after spending 20 years on the streets. I'm here to show that the Safe Sleep program is a critical component of the shelter system and needs to be kept at its current funding levels. The city's own Office of City Auditors just released a report that clearly states the Safe Sleep program is a key factor of the reduction of the public sleeping that we're seeing on the streets. So who are the individuals that are making it to the Safe Sleep program and off the streets? Well, when we're comparing the Safe Sleep residents to those who are experiencing homelessness that are not making it into the program, those in Safe Sleep program are experiencing a 59% higher rates of mental illnesses. The rates of our residents with disabling conditions are 53% higher. And the substance use disorders is 23% higher than the others that are experiencing homelessness that are out there on the streets. So the program is reaching the most vulnerable in the most critical time, as evident by the number of lives that it is saving. Jeff is one of those such residents. He overdosed 6 times over the course of 2 days, and our staff was there to Narcan him and bring him back each time. After the 12th time of his overdose, he finally came to us and said, hey, I think I'm ready for some detox and some recovery type services. Our team was able to connect him and send him on his path to recovery. As most nonprofits, we understand that budgets are tight and that there are competing priorities. But the Safe Sleeping inherently has multiple added values. What other program leverages medical services, behavioral health, harm reduction, pet care, connections to benefits, and any really other services that they may need, veteran services, right there on site at no cost to the city? Our cost to even run this program is only $27 to $28 per day per person, and we're saving lives. So I am recommending to the council to not cut the Safe Sleep budgets and to maintain its current funding level so that we can continue to see improvements on the streets of San Diego and continue to save lives like Sean and Jeff. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Josh. And Josh, you've been seated time by Monique. Is Monique present? Thank you. And Deborah? Thank you. So you will have 3 minutes. Please begin.
Hi, Council. Josh Bohannon with Father Joe's Villages. We are San Diego's oldest and largest homeless services provider for 75 years. You know, every year we do this dance with the day center. Funding is always reduced for it. We have these conversations during the budget process, and funding is historically restored. And so we knew we'd be doing this again this year, and we knew the outlook of the budget was brutal, and you all have really tough decisions to make. But what makes this year so different is when we read the budget, it wasn't just a reduction. The words in the budget were closure of the Neil Good Day Center, which, you know, a facility of that size, it served 6,700 people last year. Unduplicated clients, San Diegans, who are unsheltered, who have nowhere to go to the bathroom, nowhere to take showers, nowhere to do laundry, nowhere to take a rest during the day. A closure of a physical space of that size that serves that many people will have serious implications on the entire homeless continuum. Where are outreach workers going to go to find their individuals that they're working with? Where are health teams going to go to find people for their medication refills or for their follow-ups? And so, you know, what we ask, and you're going to hear from plenty of people today talking about what the day center offers. And really what I want you to do is listen to these comments and take in the wide breadth of services that are available to the community that can really only be done at a physical location. And I think the council members have done an excellent job of kind of describing the challenges we're going to have of closing a physical location for day center activities. We have to have a physical location for day center activities within the city of San Diego. It is a critical piece of our entire continuum, and without it, the other services are not going to be as effective. You're going to have less people exiting homelessness, less interactions with your case managers. You're going to have more police involvement because there's going to be nowhere for people to go during the day to get off the streets. There's going to be nowhere to store your things so you can go to your job, go to your doctor's appointment to get healthy. And all these will have consequences. But you're going to hear today from the outreach workers whose blood, sweat, and tears go into the day center daily. You're going to hear from volunteer groups, including a 16-year-old who's here with his parents, who volunteers at the day center. He's going to talk about his experience serving our community, having a physical location to give back to San Diego and to others. You're going to hear from health workers. You're going to hear from our food services team, right? Help bridge people, build that trust, build that comfort, and build that relationship to help improve people's conditions in their lives. A day center is more than just a physical location. It's a place, it's a foundation where trust can be built with the homeless services system. It's a reliable spot where people can go and know that I will be cared about, I will be worked with, I will be seen, and I will be safe. And so if we lose a physical location of a day center, that's a serious impact to the entire continuum, and that must be part of your considerations. Thank you.
Thank you. I will invite the next group of speakers to come up to the front of the room in the reserved seats. We'll begin testimony with Paul D'Alessio. You will be followed by Patricia Chagnon, Levi Shears, Joanne Trevillo, and Helen Coyne. And Paul, you have been seated time by Elisa. Is Elisa present? Thank you. Samar, Sebastian, and Chelsea. Great. So there will be 5 minutes placed on the clock for you to manage. Please begin.
Thank you very much for hearing us, and it's an honor to be here. Like Mr. LaCava, I did have to start with one correction, that the day center doesn't house individuals. The day center exceeds every single one of its outcomes. Housing is not one of the day center's outcomes. The day center is one of the city's most successful programs, if not the most successful. We report to other funders on other reports the housing that we do. For example, we housed 20 individuals in March alone. 20 individuals. Many of you talk about prevention and diversion. Shelter Diversion Hub for San Diego is the Neil Good Day Center. And we at Father Joe's bring money into the system that we're not even reporting to you to do diversion out of the Neil Good Day Center. To say that the day center doesn't do housing is like saying a hospital doesn't do heart surgery, because you're only looking at the pediatric department. We also did more than 3,000 shelter referrals last year. Right now, there are more than 25 clients standing in line at the Neil Good Day Center to get into shelter. The only place you can walk into and get a shelter referral in downtown San Diego. Tell me what other program does that for under $900,000, pays the other half of their budget out of donations, and provides all the other services that the Neil Good Day Center does. The East Village has seen significant gentrification over the past decade with the opening of massive housing towers such as the red and yellow towers, and businesses such as large sports bar complexes. God's Extended Hand closed, Mental Health Clubhouse closed, 16th Street bathrooms closed, Homeless Tub closing and closed, 16th Street showers closed. And next, the Day Center, the Alpha Tent on 17th, Father Joe's Villages. And what's the reasoning behind all of this? Well, I'll tell you what we hear. We're not meeting the business needs. There are people on the streets because of the Day Center. We should shut down fire stations because there's fires in the area. We should shut down hospitals because there's sick people. We should shut down a day center because there are unhoused people. Solutions and causes are different things. Right wing, left wing, and center research lists many causes to homelessness, from drugs to unaffordable housing, from mental health care to poverty. None of them list a day center. In 2016, KPS reported, we looked at relocating and just sort of forced everybody down there to the East Village, said Mike Spencer, Associate Director of City Planning. In 1989, at the opening of the Day Center, the head of the United Way, Terry Riggins, said, we have more homeless men now than ever before. You just have to look around to see that. And I've always said this, when there's a lot of people on the street, we say we have to open a day center. Then businesses move in and say, wow, there's a lot of people on the street and there's a day center. We need to shut down that day center. Then we hear the day center is not doing what it's intended to do. The day center was doing its job during the Hep A outbreak, it was doing its job during COVID, and it's doing its job now. The day center was the only center open to the public during COVID. The day center is one of the city's most economically successful programs. Contract outcomes increase every single year, and the day center meets them. 3,161 shelter referrals in 2025. In 2025, we were contracted to serve 5,000 clients. We served more than 6,000. And this year will be more than 7,000. Many of you referenced the RTFH count that we're having a decrease in street homelessness. Our numbers are increasing at the day center. What does that tell you? Where are people going for help? Next, we hear you need to control these people. The day center serves its purpose. It does not control people, it serves people. Imagine the East Village without a day center. The East Village is safer, cleaner, and healthier due to the day center. It is a respite place for those who have nowhere else to go during the day, most importantly, women who cannot rest at night on the streets because it is unsafe for them. They come to the day center and sit behind our security to be safe. The day center fills 1 to 2 dumpsters every single day with trash and food waste that would otherwise be on the street. The day center operates public restrooms in 2 locations and has active programs to combat lice and scabies. The day center is a recovery gateway for many San Diegans through our Are You Done Yet events and every single day, and medical services happen every single week at the day center. Finally, we hear we need to cut our budget. What program does over 100,000 direct services for under $1 million? What program raises money and has volunteers for half of its budget? If the day center is one of the most successful programs, if it's serving its purpose, if it's a great deal for the taxpayers, and it's needed by the clients, why are we closing? We often have, especially as politicians, a choice between the influence of money and standing by your constituents. If you want hundreds of constituents to lose showers, then vote to close the day center. If you want hundreds of constituents not to be diverted for homelessness, then close the day center. If you want thousands of constituents to lose their mailing address, there's no other mailing address for our clients downtown, then vote to close the day center. And finally, if you want your constituents not to get shelter referrals, then close the day center. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Patricia?
Hello, my name is Pat Shagnon, and I serve on the Programs Board of Father Joe's Villages. I am concerned about cuts to funding of the day center and other homeless services. Homelessness is personal to my family. My sister became homeless after escaping abusive marriage, and 2 of her 3 children later experienced homelessness as well. I have seen firsthand how homelessness can tear families apart and continue across generations when people do not get the support they need. My nephew received support through Father Joe's Villages and now has stable housing for himself and his 2 children. That is why cuts to the day center and other homeless services concern me so deeply. Shelter referral services, healthcare, housing support are not extras. They are lifelines that help people regain stability, dignity, and hope. If you want to truly address homelessness in our city, save the day center.
Thank you. Levi?
Hello, my name is Levi Shears. I'm with Father Joe's Villages. I have some concerns regarding the proposed cuts to funding for the Neil Good Day Center. The loss of the day center will mean that members of our community who are experiencing homelessness will be without one of the few safe places they have in the community to sleep, shower, receive their mail, and take significant steps towards stability. It also means that our neighbors who are just now experiencing homelessness for the first time will lose access to one of the resources that help them navigate this continuum of care in San Diego. And without the day center, I fear that we will see short-term crises turn into long episodes of homelessness where folks are engaged in high-cost interventions, including law enforcement, emergency rooms, and the already overcrowded shelters that we have. I worry that by unfunding the day center, we will see a crisis that will continue in San Diego. I ask you to please fully fund the day center in 2027. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne?
Hi, my name is Joanne Trujillo, and I'm also a worker at Father Joe's Villages. And so I'm going to tell you, my story. I actually, how do I say it? Okay. I did experience homelessness and addiction. I've been clean 6 years now, going on 7 in September. And I utilized the day center and Father Joe's Villages when I was an addict. I'm a recovering addict, thank God. And you know what? They gave me the opportunity. I started off as a volunteer, and they got a liking. Some of the boss got a liking to me, and we started working. And it helps me because when I go to the village every day, and I think about looking backwards, I look forward and I see where I was at one point, and it helps me. It helps me gain all that back, and I couldn't do it without them. And I help others. I've been working for Father Joseph for 4 years now, and I help others when I see them get out of prison, and I see them coming, and I see them in their addiction. I see them, and I go to the day center, go to the day center, and help. Thank you very much, but please don't shut down the day center.
Thank you. Helen?
Hi, my name is Helen Coyne. I'm the culinary arts instructor at Father Joe's Villages. So I help people who are wanting to get their lives back together and get into the industry. We help them find meaningful jobs in the industry. We're employing several people at the Sheraton Harbor Island, and these are really good jobs. The starting point for my clients is the day center. That is where they get the help that they need and where we can offer those services, where they can find the shelter. And once they're in shelter, we can give them the services they need, whether it's healthcare. I work closely with the executive chef, and we provide nutritious meals for people. And without healthy food, how can you live? Right? So we're providing healthy food, we're providing shelter, we're providing help to get people to get the skills they need to get meaningful employment and to get housing and to be self-sufficient. Please do not close the day center. Thank you.
Thank you. And inviting the next group of speakers to come to the front of the room, please. Paul Scheck, Celeste Demont, Elena McCollin, Myrna, and Thomas Lavelle. And Paul Scheck, you have been seated time by Jesse. Is Jesse present? Thank you. Deborah? Thank you. And Raina? Excellent. So you'll have 4 minutes, beginning with Paul.
All right, thank you. I am Paul Scheck, and I'm the manager of the Neil Good Day Center. Last year, 6,712 unique individuals came through my front gate to seek help and services. That's a big number, big number. Why would they come? Because the day center is part of the solution to end homelessness, not the problem. The Neil Good Day Center is the only place in the city that does walk-in shelter referrals, guidance, and resources. Many of the people that come, I'm going to say 2,000 that came were newly homeless individuals, scared, uncertain of how to navigate the system and what to do next. They can walk in. How do they get there? Well, I hear it every day. 211 refers me here. Other organizations bring their clients to us. If we're not there, where are they going to go? 6,712? Are they going to be in your jurisdictions? Do you have a day center ready for them? Because they're going to be there. They're not going to disappear. The Neil Good Day Center is truly part of the solution, not the problem. The truth is, you do not become homeless one day and then go someplace and get keys to an apartment the next. That's not how it works. There's an in-between time that needs to be addressed. That's where the day center comes in. We provide people a mailing address so they can get the very documents that they need to get housing. We provide a place for storage so they can store their belongings, a place to stay clean in our showers. Imagine if there is no showers, where will they shower? In your constituents' business bathrooms, perhaps? 6,712 unique individuals received 97,000 services from my staff. What other program in the city does that and is half funded by Father Joe's Villages? So we pay half of that. Very economical. Hundreds of people access our program daily just to use the bathrooms. Where are they going to go if we're not there? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of toilet paper. That's a lot of things. Women and the elderly that are unsafe to sleep at night come into my program every day to sleep on our hill because it's a secure environment. That's really important. Think about that if you were out on the street. If you want to increase the vulnerability of women and elderly on the street, then go ahead and defund this day center. But if you want to support the city's most successful and economical program, like it was mentioned, we exceed our outcomes by 200% or more every year. And we do that just by opening the gate. What we're talking about here is not shutting down a day center. We're talking about shutting down the day center, the only day center. Where else are people gonna go? Thank you.
Thank you. Celeste?
Morning, council members. My name is Dumas Celeste. I was born here. I was raised here in this amazing city. And today I work in human resources at Father Joe's Villages, supporting the people who do this amazing work. I've walked these streets my entire life, including along some of you council members as well. We've seen what this city looks like when systems are working, and we've seen what happens when they're not. The day center is more than a building, as you've heard. It has become, and it is, to me, the hub of services in our city. People know where to go when they need help. Outreach teams know it. Community members know it. And when someone is struggling, people can just go and say, go to the day center. That trust, that outreach took years, a lot of years and time to build that. Thank you.
Thank you. Elena?
Good morning, City Council members. My name is Elena McCullum, and I'm with Father Joe's Villages. I vividly remember the first time I came to the day center to visit it, and the first thing I saw was people sleeping exhausted under canopies that filtered out the hot midday sun, but safe within the walls enclosing the patio of the day center. Why? Because it was not safe for them to sleep the night before where they were on the streets, as Councilmember Whitburn pointed out, as so many of my colleagues have pointed out. You will be hearing about the many services that the day center helps people connect to, and you have heard indeed already. It's more than a respite. It's the beginning. It's the connection point. They get access to hot, nutritious meals, access to emergency shelter, the prospect of long-term housing, of escaping homelessness at last through case management, job training, healthcare, therapy, and so much more. Please do not close the day center. Where will people go? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Myrna. And Myrna, you have been seated time by Anthony. Is Anthony present? Thank you. So I'll place 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, City Council members. My name is Mirna Davalos, and I work at Father Joe's Villages. I live in City Council District 7, where my husband and I are raising our 5 and our 3-year-olds. And I am deeply concerned about the proposed budget cuts to homeless services, especially the day center. I was initially relieved to hear that the mayor was prioritizing homelessness, and then shocked to learn that there was any cuts for homeless services. Cutting these services will not reduce homelessness. It will make it harder for people to exit homelessness and regain stability. Recently, my 5-year-old had his first awareness of homelessness. He said, "Mommy, I saw a homeless person today." And I asked him, "What makes you, excuse me, what makes you think that they were homeless?" He said, "Because they were sleeping on the ground." I asked him what he thought about that, and he quietly said, "That's not good, Mommy. It's not nice." I paused initially not really knowing how to respond. But he looked at me and confidently said, "It's okay, mommy. The people will help him find a home so he can have one like I do." From the mouth of a child. My son instinctively understands something we cannot afford to forget. When people are suffering, we help them. Please do not cut funding for the day center or other homeless services. In a worsening crisis, this is when we are supposed to lean into compassion, dignity, and solutions. I want to be able to look at my children in the eyes and tell them that yes, the people did help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Thomas Lavelle. And Thomas, you will be followed by Dr. Latha Sundar, RJ, and Kay Rafanan if those individuals would like to make their way down to the front seat. Thank you for your patience. 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the City Council. I also want to express my appreciation to city staff and the Housing Commission. In my experience, you've all been great collaborators, and this is a really difficult situation with the budget. I've been with Father Joe's 11 years. The collective time with the colleagues in this room is approaching 2 centuries service of San Diego. And I love these people because they save lives. The day center, there's so many stories to tell, and it's an entry point for people. And I think about the father I met on the point in time count last year who was waking up his 4 daughters in a tent in the park, getting them ready for school, and his phone was dead. He needed some place to go to charge his phone. I personally am in recovery. Last week I was at a meeting, talked to somebody afterwards who'd fallen on hard times. He needed a shower. I connected him to the day center. We are better than this, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sundar? And you have been seated time by Olivia. Is Olivia present?
Good
Thank you.
afternoon,
And
respected-
Sanita? Excuse me. Thank you. 3 minutes. Please begin.
Good afternoon, respected council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my less privileged neighbors. I'm Latha Sundar, and I've been involved with serving the homeless at Neilgood Day Center for over 3 decades. And the rest of my volunteers and service members in one of our 2 nonprofits have been serving for over 50 years. I'm also a board member of a couple of different nonprofit organizations which help homelessness as well as provide scholarships. So I'm saying all this not for any other reason except to say that there are hundreds and hundreds of people who truly care in making a difference for our less privileged neighbors. Specifically with respect to Neilgood Day Center, we make sure we provide fresh food, fruits, living essentials like blankets, toiletries, clothing, shoes, socks, a lot more. During COVID, we supplied tens of thousands of face masks and hand sanitizers. And the scholarships go to the AVID programs, which take kids who are underprivileged, and many of them are now serving as leaders of a community. Along with all the members of our different nonprofits and the private entities in our volunteer group, we are totally dedicated to helping the less privileged for the last several decades. And I can absolutely 100% more and more vouch for the very critically important role played by Neilgood Day Center. I personally visit the day center at least 4 times a week. We go in, mingle with all the homeless. I have friends over here. Isaac is right here. Sean is here, and Mike, and many others who can have to make it here. I've known them for decades. This is a very well-managed and highly effective site, which provides very essentially and critically necessary access to facilities such as restrooms, shower stalls, laundry, mail room, the computers for employment searches, much needed rest from either the sun or the rain. And I've seen this with my eyes day after day. I've been in Calcutta, so you can imagine we should not be comparing ourselves to such situations. This is California, this is San Diego, we should not be having this at all. And it's also an interim program which can save several lives before newly homeless people find shelter. It's a haven for hope, right? And it also provides a safe and convenient access to a location for us to provide, for us, entities, nonprofits like us to provide fresh fruit, snack packs, food, toiletries, and other things like I mentioned. And many of them tell us Thanks for loving us. Thanks for caring. These are human entities, they are not numbers. And I know you understand that, and I so appreciate the way you all spoke up for this. Neither I or my colleagues at the fellow volunteers has, in the last several decades, seen a big reduction in the number of homeless, to be honest with you. And in the 60 years of life that I've come to realize that, I guess I'm out of time. All I
Thank you.
want to
This
say
does
is,
conclude your time.
please do not cut the funding from the bottom of my heart. And we are willing to help in any which way possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your concluding statement. Our next speaker is RJ Aronson, and you have been seated time by Ann, Hamilton, Rob. Is Rob present? Rob. And John? Is John present? Okay, that will leave you with 3 minutes with that, the two speakers present.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the council president and the members of the council for allowing me and the other supporters here today to address all of you. My name is RJ Aronson, and I'm 16 years old, and I'm a sophomore at Scripps Ranch High School. I have a younger brother, Sammy, who is in 8th grade. I want to take just a couple of minutes to tell you all why the Neil Good Day Center is such a vital part of our city's efforts to help the homeless and why it has a special meaning for me and my brother. My brother and I are avid basketball players. A few years ago, we noticed that our feet were growing so fast, it seemed like every 2 months we were getting new basketball shoes. My brother and I thought that there must be a way to donate our lightly used shoes to the homeless or other people in need. We talked with my parents, and we were fortunate enough to be put in touch with the Neil Good Day Center and Paul Scheck. Paul told us that the shoes were one of the most needed items for homeless people, and that we would work with us to get them distributed through the center. My brother and I thought that this sounded like a great idea, so we decided to start an annual shoe drive to collect as many lightly used shoes as possible for the homeless. Over the last 4 years, we have had a wonderful partnership with Paul and the Neil Good Day Center, and in total, we have collected and donated over 1,000 pairs of shoes. We would never have been able to get all these shoes into the hands and onto the feet of so many people in need without the incredible work of Paul and his staff, and it would be a devastating loss if they had to close their doors. I will never forget our first drop-off day. It was certainly eye-opening for a kid from Scripps Ranch who really took a lot of things for granted. There were hundreds of men and women inside and outside of the center, many with just the clothes on their backs and in bare feet or wearing only socks. When we started unloading the shoes, many people came over and asked if they could have a pair. It was both heartbreaking and incredibly rewarding to see how grateful everyone was to have a new pair of shoes. Through our partnership with Paul, my brother and I have seen firsthand the huge impact the Neil Good Day Center has had on the community and the commitment of Paul and his staff to helping the homeless crisis here in San Diego. The center provides the only place in San Diego where displaced people can do essential functions of living: showering, doing laundry, having a safe place to rest or sleep, storing personal items, and getting their mail. More importantly, it provides them with the dignity and hope that comes with having access to all of those things. This is very important when trying to obtain the ultimate goal, transitioning them into permanent housing and employment. In conclusion, I want to remind the council that when you ask the average San Diegan what they believe is the most serious issue facing the city, most of them don't say potholes or public safety, even though those are important. They say homelessness. In addition, our homelessness problem is one of the first things our visitors and tourists see when they come to the gas lamp or take in a game at Petco. We understand that you have difficult decisions to make with limited resources, but my brother and I would respectfully ask that you not cut the funding for this vital resource for the homeless population in San Diego. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kay Ranathanan, and you have been seated time by Jennifer. Is Jennifer present? Thank you. So 2 minutes on the clock.
Good morning, council members. Kay Rafanan with Father Joe's Villages Rapid Rehousing and Permanent Supportive Housing Programs. When people have access to resources, it shows up in the community. Case in point, we work with clients during 2016 hepatitis A outbreak and COVID-19. Eliminating the day center will not reduce street impacts. It will shift preventable issues onto police workloads. People will start knocking on residential doors and businesses. The day center also caters to a group of individuals who are stabilizing and managing trauma, and some may not be able to enter the shelter right away or get into permanent housing immediately. They rely on case management and housing navigation at the day center. Keeping the day center is the responsible choice for public health, safety, and community stability. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize, Rob Irving's slips got shuffled, so he was separate. Is Rob Irving in the room? Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about that. So Rob, you've been seated time by John, so you will have 2 minutes to speak. And as you're making your way up, if these individuals would like to make their way up to the front of the room, Lisa Krieger, Lori Lipsman, Joanne Franciscus, and Gilberto Vera. All right, 2 minutes, please begin.
Good morning, council members. My name is Robert Irving, District 3. I'm very lucky to be a director of Father Joe's Villages, and recently just finished off being the several years of being the chair. I'd like to talk to you today about dignity. Let me start by saying I applaud the council's efforts on finding shelter beds and maintaining shelter beds. But while we work towards that goal, there are still thousands of people on the street, and we can't abandon them while we're working to find additional shelter beds. I'd like you all to imagine for a moment that when you got up this morning, you weren't able to wash. In fact, it's hard to remember the last time you had a shower. Actually, you don't have very many clothes, but you haven't been able to wash those clothes for weeks. Oh darn, also, it's hard to find a place to go to the bathroom. It's hard for any of us here to imagine that's the case. But everyone on the street experiences that. Well, they experience that unless they have access to the Neil Good Day Center. And there, they can wash themselves, they can get clean, they can experience some dignity out on the streets. If we want to, if we consider San Diego and what the residents who are housed see when they walk down the streets and what our tourists see when they walk down the streets, imagine how bad it will be if the homeless on the streets don't have someplace to go to the bathroom. They can't wash their clothes and they can't take a shower. The tourist experience of homelessness in San Diego is going to be significantly worse. The day center also provides an entree into services. We know, is that 2 minutes?
It
Sorry
is.
to be slow.
Thank you. If you would like to expand on your comments, you can submit a written comment at councilcommittee@sandiego.gov, and we will post it and circulate it to the council members. Lisa? And Lisa, you will have 1 minute on the clock in front to manage.
Hello, I'm Dr. Krieger. I attended Tulane School of Public Health and attended UCLA School of Medicine. I also worked and cared for many of our homeless at the clinic at Father Joe's. Thank you, all of you, for all you do in keeping the health and well-being of our community at the forefront of all your decisions. As you know, prevention is key in public health. If our homeless are not able to have access to clean water and facilities to wash and clean themselves in their clothes, we put our community at risk for diseases with fecal oral transmission like hepatitis A and many others. We are not a third world country. We should not restrict access to clean water. I can't tell you how many times I've cared for patients at the clinic with soiled jeans and fecal matter running down their legs. Truth. They were always directed and promptly received immediate care at the day shelter, at the day center. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
Ms. Lipman, thank you. I'll place 1 more minute on the clock.
Thank you. Some of our homeless have jobs in the service industry. They prepare food and they work at our San Diego County Fair. Many of them, thankfully, have those jobs. Can you imagine receiving a soda from someone who just pulled up their jeans and handed it to your parent? Again, fulminant hepatitis A kills. Those who are most susceptible are over the age of 50, and my last patient in the ICU was waiting for a liver transplant, had no prior illnesses, and was in his late 40s. There were 400 hospitalizations with this last epidemic. I don't know, maybe it was too far for you to recall, but that was just in 2017, 2018. We had a major crisis then. It is going to be much worse because actually, vaccinations, people are reluctant to get them these days. So I beg of you, please do not create another public health crisis. It was hard enough last time. Thanks.
Thank you for your concluding remark. Joanne? And Joanne, you have been seated time by Itzetza Lopez. Thank you. So you will have 2 minutes.
Good morning, City Council members. I'm Joanne Franciscus, CEO of the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. We provide free legal services for lower-income San Diegans to address the root causes of poverty and inequity, and we run the city's eviction prevention program. Each year, the EPP helps thousands of San Diegans avoid eviction and homelessness by providing a one-stop shop of outreach, education, clinic assistance, legal representation, case management, and emergency financial assistance. The EPP started in 2021, sustained a funding cut the next grant cycle, and has not seen an increase since, despite overwhelming demand for services. Every year, funding runs out prior to the end of the grant term, and we are forced to reduce services, including this year when we have not spent any grant funds on emergency financial assistance since August. So any reduction in funding will force us to decrease legal services, which would mean more people falling into homelessness that could have been spared. Homelessness prevention is a crucial strategy in dealing with the housing crisis, and the EPP is extraordinarily effective and efficient. From July 2024 through March of this year, the EPP provided legal representation to almost 4,000 households. Of the cases resolved to date, more than 92% avoided homelessness. It would have cost the government an estimated $50,000 per individual per year to address homelessness after it occurred. By contrast, the EPP helped prevent trauma, save taxpayers money, and reduce the strain on emergency services 92% of the time, and did so for an average one-time cost per household of just $1,148. At a time when federal safety net programs are being cut and more people are facing financial and housing instability, every dollar invested in the EPP is a morally and fiscally responsible investment that benefits the entire city. Respectfully, the IDA's proposed cuts would be catastrophic to the city's progress in addressing homelessness. I urge you to maintain level funding for the EPP. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Gilberto Vera. And Mr. Vera, you've been seated time by Marnie. Is Marnie present? Thank you. And Mr. Vera, before you begin, I'm going to invite the next group of speakers down. Dominic Lemendry, if you can please come down. Izian Rim, Gloria Cruz, and Stephen Russell. And Mr. Vera, you'll have 2 minutes on the clock. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Council President, Council members. My name is Gil Vera from the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. I'm the director of our Housing Justice Collaborative, and I'm here to speak in strong support of fully funding the City of San Diego's eviction prevention program. EPP is one of the city's most effective tools at preventing homelessness, and the data clearly shows that the investment works. From July 2024 through March 2026, the EPP served nearly 4,000 households, helping more than 8,000 San Diegans and over 2,500 children. In the same period, the EPP also provided over 2,300 court-based clinic services, answered more than 3,500 hotline calls, and made over 4,000 referrals, and conducted over 50 education outreach events across the city. The EPP also delivers real tangible outcomes for families. Because of the EPP, our attorneys were able to assist a family facing an unlawful eviction. We determined that the notice was invalid, the unit was unpermitted, and the tenant was facing landlord intimidation and discrimination. With EPP support, our attorneys fully litigated the case, negotiated a resolution where the tenant received over $10,000 in relocation assistance, nearly $14,000 in waived rent, the return of her security deposit, and critically no eviction on her record. Without the EPP, this client likely would have faced an unlawful eviction and possible homelessness. Instead, a relatively modest investment in legal services prevented displacement, avoided downstream public costs, and helped her move into stable and safe housing. In short, the EPP saves homes, saves families, and saves taxpayer dollars. Given the rising rents, increasing eviction filings, and federal funding cuts, reducing the EPP now would jeopardize the progress we have made as a city in preventing homelessness. I urge the council to at least maintain EPP funding at the $3 million level. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And for the public's awareness, we have 12 speakers left here in chambers with 10 hands up currently in the virtual queue. Dominic Lemendry, you have been seated time by Max Dobson. Is Max present? Thank you. And Gabby, thank you. So Mr. Lemendry, you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dominic Lemandry, District Director of the Ballpark District Community Partnership. The Ballpark District's cleanup crew is responsible for cleanliness, safety, and public realm services within the 22 blocks surrounding Petco Park. The Ballpark District is a neighborhood. It is home to thousands of residents, the Central Library, MTS headquarters, small businesses, San Diego Padres, E3 Civic High School, and major employers. Our district also includes Imperial Avenue from the Ballpark District, or from the ballpark, to Interstate 5, which is the most challenging and highest crime areas in San Diego. Since July, we have removed nearly 500,000 pounds of trash from city sidewalks. This is difficult work, and our team is out there every day helping the neighborhood clean, keep the neighborhood clean, safe, and accessible. We work closely with city, SDPD neighborhood policing, DPW abatement teams, and property owners throughout the neighborhood and have made meaningful progress. We appreciate the collaboration that has made that possible. We also want to thank Councilmember Whitburn for his leadership on the unsafe camping ordinance, which has been an important tool in helping reduce unsheltered population in downtown San Diego. At the same time, we want to be candid about the challenges that remain. A significant share of the city's total shelter beds, homeless services, and encampments are located in and around our neighborhood, creating real impacts for residents, workers, and businesses. We support preserving shelter beds because they provide an alternative to sidewalks or freeways, and we believe the city should prioritize programs that move people off the streets and into shelter, housing, and/or treatment. With 9 or 10 shelter requests currently going unfilled, any shelter closures or reductions should have replacement beds in place before existing ones are taken offline. Services such as showers or meals should be operated within existing shelters whenever possible, rather than through standalone facilities. The public safety impacts are also significant. According to SDPD data, 16th and 17th Street between Imperial and J Street make up only, Imperial and K Street make up only 0.02 square miles within Central Division. Based on geography alone, this should account for only 0.02% of police-related activities. Instead, it accounts for 15 times more calls for service, 20 times more crime cases, and 30 times more arrests than would otherwise be expected. When one neighborhood is asked to support a disproportionate share of the city's shelter and homeless infrastructure, it must also be provided with public safety resources, cleanliness, and street-level support needed to manage that responsibility and prevent conditions from deteriorating. Commitments were made to this community, and those commitments matter. Our neighborhood will continue to do its part. We are proud of the progress that has been made and ask that this work continue through a balanced, coordinated, and citywide approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Azine Rim, and you have been seated timed by Tassie. Is Tassie present? Thank you. So I will place 2 minutes on the clock in front for you to manage.
Greetings. I got a book. The name of the book, 35 Years Doing Good. The book is about the Day Center. And also the book is about homeless people trying to do the right thing if you give them the opportunity. It got 10 chapters in this book, but I stopped at 9. The 10th chapter is up to you. It could be a good outcome or it could be a bad outcome. The good outcome, you keep the Day Center open. The bad outcome, you close it. It's all up to you. The Day Center, I'm also speaking on generations yet to come. When the Day Center was built in 1991, a lot of babies were born that year. Now, 35 years later, and I met some of them on the streets that was born and raised in the city of San Diego. And by closing the Day Center down, what are you doing? You're turning your back on them. So I plead with you on the behalf of the Day Center and the good work that it does and the many people that it serves every day, because I see it every day. I talk to clients every day. I am a homeless person myself. I'm an advocate for them, for the community, for the police department, for the business people, for everybody. I'm not against nobody here. Only I'm asking for opportunity. but the last chapter is up to you in this book. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you for your concluding remark. Our next speaker is Gloria. And Gloria, you've been seated time by Jacob. Is Jacob present? Thank you. So I will place 2 minutes on the clock for you to manage.
Great. Good morning, council members. My name is Gloria Cruz Cardenas. I'm the Chief Impact Officer at the San Diego. The center is grateful for the quick response from the council last year during the budget process, especially during times where we're looking at federal protections for LGBTQ plus people and transgender individuals are facing increasing threats. I am here to request to continue support of our substance use disorder treatment services. Last year, we received vital opioid settlement funds to sustain this program. However, as the current budget does not yet reflect the reallocation of those settlement funds for the upcoming year, I am here to formally ask the council to ensure that this funding is sustained. For the second year in a row, the center has not received CDBG funds. Therefore, the opioid settlement allocation is not just a request for us, but it is a lifeline for our community. Our SUD services mitigate the harm caused by criminalization, stigma, and systemic inequities. We provide trauma-informed care that helps our communities build resilience and navigation and recovery. This funding sustains our staff. Many of our employees are LGBTQ plus individuals who are already bearing the brunt of a hostile political climate. We have proven that with the $300,000, we can deeply impact those struggling with the substance use. Imagine the reach that we could have with even greater support. We also ask for more clarity regarding the total remaining opioid settlement funds balance. The center meets every requirement to administer these funds effectively. We urge you that the city developed a strategy that prioritizes trusted community-based agencies like ourselves who already are doing the work on the ground to distribute more funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Stephen Russell. And Mr. Russell, before you begin, I'm going to invite the final group of speakers up to the front of the room: Jeffrey Burrs, Blair Beekman, Natalie Ratchke, and Kenna. Please begin, Mr. Russell.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Council members. My name is Stephen Russell. I'm the President and CEO of the San Diego Housing Federation, where we believe that everybody has a right to a safe and affordable place to live. We're also one of the founding partners of the Basic Needs Coalition. The Homeless Strategies and Solutions Department provides absolutely critical services that stand between vulnerable San Diegans and the street. The proposed cuts would severely reduce them, these critical services. Homelessness is a housing problem, and the solution to homelessness encompasses the entire spectrum of services that this department provides. Removing any one of them breaks a key link in the chain that brings people to housing. The end goal is permanent housing for everyone, but it's going to take a while. The recently released point-in-time count suggests we may finally be at an inflection point in this crisis, and to pull back now, to pull back support just when we're reaching this pivot point would be more than short-sighted, it would be tragic. These are not line items, these are lifelines for individuals. Please protect them. I'll also say I may be the only one in the room old enough to have met Neil Good. He could have been our first gay council member, could have actually he could have beat Bob Filner as council member and talk about prevention.
Thank
Talk
you.
about prevention.
Our next speaker is Jeffrey.
Good evening. Thank you, council members. I'm here representing Brightbright Properties, which manages a property 101 16th Street near the Neil Good Center. It has frontage on 17th as well. My family's been property owners actually for over 100 years in the area, so we've seen a lot of transitions over the years. I'm surely not an expert on homelessness, but I do know the additional costs that don't get reflected in these budget numbers. Frankly, I think Father Joe does a good job. Josh, gave us an opportunity to look over the site and see what they're doing. They're doing a good job, but the site's too small to do what they really need to do there, and it creates spillover. We spend a lot in prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thanks a lot for previous words from Councilperson Raul Campillo on what we don't do this year, what we cut this year is going to have to be brought back in the next year. And he brought up the ideas of foresight and long-term planning. An interesting concept. It's my understanding that Father Joe's Villages can balance out some of the costs, and that the day center can be open 5 times a week still, and it'll be closed on weekends. Can we have assurances at least that is taking place, and try to at least compromise from there for it to be 6 days or 7 days a week, and that budgets can happen for the future? It's a great place. I get my mail there. Think of that. If I don't have mail there, I am not allowed employment. I mean, it cuts off a lot of services if a person doesn't have a place, a mail residence. Please consider that and how important this center is for people. Thank you, in a number of ways.
Thank you. Natalie?
If anyone wants to donate their minute to me, I'd really appreciate it. I have a few things that I'd like to touch bases on. I'm in District 7. I have an EHV. I'm not here to tell you about all the statistics that you already know. I have used legal aid, and they have helped me win a case from being evicted. The fact of the matter is, standing here, I'm insulted. I'm insulted by the government in which it stands, that HUD has created this problem, and it's been passed down, and it keeps getting passed down, and then you gaslight the public. Mr. Kentley, great saying, it's like those are only 2 options. I believe that those are not our only 2 options. They lead us to believe that they are. I'm an indigenous person of the United States of America, of the first federally recognized tribe. I've spoke to Sarah Jacobs, still waiting to hear back. I represent the majority of the people with these EHVs, even if I don't know them. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Kenna.
My name is Kenna Ledbetter, and I'm a fundraiser with Father Joe's Villages. I'm concerned with the cuts proposed to the Neil Good Day Center. In my work, I'm often asked, what solves homelessness? The answer I've come to is the ability to look people facing homelessness in their eyes without turning away from seeing them. Dignity. The day center sees people and offers people the vital first steps towards receiving help. Where will people go to use the restrooms without the day center? Where will people go for rest, especially in the summer heat to come? Where will people go to get their mail for their services that they began to accept? Where will people go to do their laundry? Where will people go? Please keep the funding for this program in the budget. Please keep this program. Thank you.
Thank you. And Council President, this concludes testimony here in chambers.
Okay, just for meeting management, and this is not locked in, so I apologize. After we take the remote callers, we're going to go a recess. And hopefully by the time that comes, we'll actually figure out when we're going to come back. It's looking like 1:30, but hopefully I'll make a formal announcement before we actually recess. Everybody can plan accordingly. My apologies if anybody was here for anybody that's here for the Housing Commission, but we'll need to take a break and then come back maybe as early as 1:30 to pick up the Housing Commission and then the other items that were scheduled for this afternoon. So please proceed with the remote callers.
Thank you, Council President. I'll begin the 5-minute timer for all those in the virtual queue to indicate if they wish to speak to sub-item I, homelessness strategies and solutions. As a reminder, each caller will have 1 minute. We will begin testimony with Andrea Ebbing. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, this is Andrea Ebbing. I'm asking you, Council, today to not look at me as the victim of these people that I'm about to speak about, but more of an executive. So more of seeing eye to eye on this information I'm sharing. I just want to mention that there was like $600,000 that went into a shelter-ready app by the DA's office, who should not be working on homeless solutions. It's Health and Human Services. It is not her issue. Where's the money? The app doesn't work. She's focused on reaching retail while Prop 36 is driving incredible homelessness. As she fills those facilities like Los Colinas and Bailey, people are losing their homes left and right. I think we need to make sure the day center stays open and make sure those prevention programs, not focused on addiction, focused on keeping people in their homes, would be incredibly important. If she prosecuted violent crimes in DV, we'd have so much less homelessness. Prop 36 is driving it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bradley. Please unmute and begin.
All right, thanks for taking my call. Here's the homeless strategy. Vote to put Mayor Todd Gloria in jail and give him a cell phone, and don't let him out unless he comes up with $50 million. He can call all his mayor buddies, his guys. He just went to France on our dime. He can call up the French president, ask him for some money, and don't let him out in the jail. And then we can have water balloons, and guys can charge pay $20 for a water balloon to throw him out in jail. And don't give him a little, just one blanket and very limited food, and just have him raise the money, man. Everybody wants to talk to Todd, but he's not around. So he'd be in jail raising money. He'd be up to good stuff on the phone. And he's got a lot of guys on his phone line. He'd call the governor, get a few million off him, call the mayor, different mayors in all the cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Walker, please unmute and begin.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks to all of you who emphasize prevention. This is especially applicable to drug use prevention versus harm reduction strategies to reduce substance use related homelessness. There's no better example than yesterday's massive DEA raid in Los Angeles, where $10 million in drugs were seized from traffickers dealing blatantly in homeless camps and public places. Addressing this, an LA official called policies such as free needle and pipe programs ineffective, saying they only add to the problem. And he added, letting people use drugs with no consequences is failed policy. San Diego's homeless are also easy targets of rampant drug dealing by criminal gangs and cartels. So I ask you, please, let's increase prevention strategies to stem drug use problems before they start.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Phone number ending in 8700. You can unmute by pressing *6. You will have 1 minute.
Thank you, Sarah. Joy Senyata. Siem Rim just spoke to all of us. I first met him about 2008. He was is a dedicated non-agenda public comment speaker for years with me. He's real and true. Siem Rim, he's real and true. I love you, Siem. It's so wonderful to see you. It's been years. Please listen to him. And so I'll finish with this. My default on this, and I said this before, you'll hear it probably, I just feel good about it. My default on this is we stumble even as we live the miracle. Love to all. A great morning.
Thank you. Catherine Rhodes, please unmute and begin.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes. Please fully fund the Neil Good Day Center. To Father Joe's Dream for Change, Teresa, and Homeless Strategies, please contact me because I know of the annual $20 million available in former RDA funding from the 1992 Agreement for Cooperation with the County for the Poor in Downtown. We could actually expand Neil Good Day Center, not close it down. It supports sleeping sites. So anyway, great, fabulous news. Finally, the city's very first tiny home community will be opening up in June at the Compass Station on Cass Street in Pacific Beach, run by Carol Blayton of Shoreline Community Service. This tiny home model could be used everywhere. It could actually be used at Lot O in Balboa Park. We could put these tiny homes in Barracks H. I have so many solutions. Please, somebody contact me. Thank you.
Thank you. The 5-minute timer has expired. We have 9 hands remaining in the queue. We will take no other callers on sub-item I beyond these remaining 9 hands raised. John Brady, please unmute and begin.
Good morning. Cutting the budget for homeless strategies and solutions will lead to more suffering, more instability, and yes, more deaths among people living without homes. We cannot continue to saying homelessness is a humanitarian crisis while simultaneously reducing the very system designed to prevent people from dying on our streets. And this budget puts the failures of the strong mayor form of government front and center. The fiscal challenges facing the city were not a surprise yet. And instead of a coordinated, transparent process that brought together departments, service providers, advocates, et cetera, we are facing a broad-based reduction of 7%. At the same time, residents are being asked to absorb cuts after years of costly and questionable top-down decisions from Ash Street to other bad real estate deals that have eroded public trust. This is not about a Republican or a Democrat. Mayor after mayor, we have the same structural problems. A budget reflects our values, and if we choose to balance budgets on the backs of people already living in crisis, then we're making a moral choice.
Our next speaker is Shuna. Please unmute and begin.
Thank you, Council Committee members. My name is Shanae Ball. I'm a veteran and military spouse speaking on behalf of Veterans Village of San Diego. VSD would like to thank the San Diego Housing Commission for updating their budget priority memo clarifying that a 72-bed bridge shelter site has yet to be determined. That said, we remain vigilant regarding the mayor's proposed budget, which includes funding to place a bridge shelter on our campus. Implementing this proposal would displace members of our veteran community who are currently occupying those beds. Our VVSC campus has proudly served veterans for 45 years, and we look forward to working collaboratively with the City and Housing Commission to address our regional homelessness crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Becky Rapp, please unmute and begin. Becky Rapp, I have given you permission to speak. Please unmute and provide your comment at this time. Okay, Ms. Rapp, we will return to you for one final opportunity. Judy Strang, please unmute and begin.
Yes, good morning. Judy Strang here. I have 3 thoughts that I'll sum up in 60 seconds. 1, the Board of Supervisors, and I've mentioned it before, I don't understand why we can't have a more coordinated effort since Health and Human Services is a department that's part of the county for whom this is a responsibility. 2, the speaker who's congratulated you for the language you've been using around prevention. I too say that. We need to look at the beginnings of the problems that we see with drug abuse within the homeless population. We'd save ourselves a lot of grief if all the messaging from the city made it clear that drug use never had a good end result. And 3, you only have so much money. You can't house everybody, brutal as that may sound. But it seems to me that at least a day center or a drop-in center could be a place where people can get clean, where they can plug in their phone, where they can have a mailing address, where they can speak to case management.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Patricia Fillet, please unmute and provide your comment at this time.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Kettner and Vine failed from the perception after $1 billion the city would not own the property. Sunbreak Ranch is your model for social housing and services. Currently, El Cajon Transitional Living Center CEO, Dr. Julie Hayden, runs that model at 95% success rate of addiction rebound. Expand this and use this site as the model. We can no longer allow no 6 times later as an answer. Otherwise, we will not solve homelessness in our lifetime, and we'll continue to repeat the pattern of response and approach. Impacts to life, property, livable, walkable communities. Taxpayers are paying more, but the industrial complex is stronger. San Diego and California cannot absorb the over 200,000 homeless with addictions as the welcoming motif. Find a way. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Sharad, please unmute and begin.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
We can. Please continue.
Thank you very much. We must find more efficient and cost-effective ways to address this crisis and prioritize funding for programs that provide shelter beds and maximize resources to programs that place people in permanent housing. Now, that's not a quote from me. That is a quote from Mayor Todd Gloria. I fully understand his rationale, and I agree with it. In his initiative, which was called the San Diegans Together Tackling Homelessness Initiative, it aimed to raise $370 million. He only got 1.3 million, and that is fine. I understand that there are limitations on funding, and I understand that Todd Gloria is doing everything that he can to solve this problem. What I believe and I think you already realize this as a community, and I think what you need to communicate to Todd Gloria, who is also interested in solving this problem, is that the Neil Good Day Center is San Diegans Together Tackling Homelessness. This is a grassroots initiative that is partially funded by you, partially funded by Father Joe's Villages, who've been doing this for Lord knows how long.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Thank you. And as a reminder, the 5-minute timer had concluded. We have 3 hands remaining in the virtual queue. If anybody else raises their hand, we will be taking it down. You could submit comment to councilcommittee@sandiego.gov. Kelly, please unmute and begin. Kelly? Kelly, I've given you permission to speak. I see you have unmuted. We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
I want to point the council to page 210 of the IBA's budget review. It highlighted 1.18 million general fund allocation for downtown street outreach that is entirely redundant. We already have a citywide coordinated outreach program. There is no need for this separate siloed line item. I urge you to redirect that 1.18 million to keep the Neil Good Day Center open. This day center provides vital housing-focused services that practically nobody else provides. Please follow the data on page 210 and eliminate any duplications to save critical services. Please prevent the mayor's office from passing things that fall under our noses.
Thank you. Daniel, please unmute and begin.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the time and the council for your leadership. My name is Daniel Fellis. I'm part owner of the Atrium Apartments located on 16th Street between K and Imperial. The back of my building is directly opposite the center. We provide housing, sorely needed housing to the community. I work with all the projects, Alpha Project, the Housing Commission. To anyone who has vouchers, we provide desperately needed housing to the community. And what I've seen the past few, I also live on site, and what I've seen the past 3 years on this 17th Street is abysmal. If you want to see the Walking Dead movie, just come to the 17th Street, and you have to see it in life, in real life. I've seen everything from prostitution, drug use, drug peddling, human trafficking, stabbing. I've been verbally assaulted probably daily, just trying to keep my property clean. And I have families living here. I have children. I have single mothers. I have people that live here because they need to be here.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Thank you for your comment. And returning one final time to Becky Rapp for an opportunity to provide comment at this time. Becky Rapp, I've given you permission to speak. Please unmute and begin. Becky Rapp. Council President, this concludes public comment on sub-item I.
All right, thank you, Sarah. One last opportunity for council members to weigh in with concluding comments. I see Council Member Elo Rivera is on the line.
Thank you, Council President. I mostly want to say thank you to the folks who spoke and stayed around. It's such an important issue, and you sharing the perspectives that you did is incredibly important, and I just want to acknowledge that. I'll also say that hearing from young people who understand instinctively that people shouldn't live on the streets and should deserve to be cared for. A healthcare provider who's seeing patients showing up in soiled clothing, people having their basic needs unmet, folks who have been served by the eviction prevention program and avoided homelessness as a result of that. All of that is incredibly powerful. And I don't know if there's a single issue that we discuss that makes me, that is heavier and also just quite frankly, like fills me with rage more than this conversation, because these choices, and I know I keep saying it and there's a broken record, so apologies to my colleagues for having to hear it over and over again, but it's because it is so unsettling to me that we're having this conversation in one of the wealthiest cities in the richest country in the world. And that, it's like the ultimate false choice of having people living in those sort of conditions while such affluence and abundance is experienced by others. So that's why we talk about making tourists pay their fair share. That's why we talk about asking corporations that are worth billions and paying a rounding error in local taxes here to pay their fair share. It's why we talk about taxing people who own empty homes while people can't even find a place to go to the bathroom, let alone sleep at night. That's why my office, we are so motivated. It's this issue. So I just want to say thank you again for not allowing us to turn away from the issue and the people who are experiencing the impacts of it. I want to say thank you to my colleagues who won't do that. Councilmember Whitburn, again, thank you. It does not have to be this way. And I appreciate the opportunity to have a real conversation about it, because we need to continue to have real conversations about it. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, with that, that will conclude sub-item I. So we will now take a brief recess and return for sub-item J at 1:30 or shortly thereafter, assuming that we have 5 council members here in chamber. So that's the goal. All right, thank you all, everybody. And again, apologies for those folks who had shown up this morning for Housing Commission.
For my machine, I walk for my machine.